this meeting to order. Mr. Klein, will you please provide us with the invocation, sir?
Absolutely. Heavenly Father, we got some big decisions to make today. You know that more than any of us do. And we ask your wisdom, your guidance, your patience, and your blessings on everything we do today in this meeting. We ask that you help us do the will of the people and your will as well. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Recognition of the public. Okay. Being done. I'll go ahead and give my report. My report's just going to outline just a light agenda, but there's quite a bit going on today. I appreciate everybody being here. So here's kind of the thrust of how we're going to what we're going to first do is Mr. Long is going to reorient us on the overall budget. And so the new sheet, I believe, will have some adjustments that we made both from the last meeting that have now been baked in, and we had put out a request for folks to send targeted cuts if they could find them, and some folks came back, and we very much appreciate that. So a lot of that's going to be baked in. Target's not baked in. Oh, the target is baked in. Okay. Okay. So but we do have those. So we'll start from the bottom. Then we'll look at some of the notes that we have. We have some specific things to look at for the library, some specific things from the election commission, and then from there we'll move into some of the individual budgets. And during the individual budgets, I know folks are here. You will, as we have done before, have to have the opportunity to speak on anything as stuff is coming up. So I'm going to try to move us along pretty quickly, but given that we've asked for some additional kind of cuts, we will allow people to speak and be liberal with that. One more note that I would like to do, I'd like to set a hard stop. Do we have a hard stop on here?
We do have a committee that starts at 5:30.
Yeah, so I have a hard stop at 3. I have to. What's that?
I'll second that.
So all right. I'm gonna hard stop at 3. We have a second.
I have to leave at 12 because I still have a day.
Do we still have?
To make sure, yeah, you'll still have a quorum unless somebody else is.
All right. I mean, I would be fine. I think we'll be done before then. How let's stop at 2. I'll have a motion to stop at 2. We have a second on that. Sorry. Are you good with the second, Ms. Burgdorf?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so hard stop at 2.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
We're going to have are we going to stop, are you anticipating we're completely finished, or there's another day in the?
I think we will be done with recurring today. That is my intent. We may have a little bit left on capital as we're getting close. Go ahead.
Long-term planning sheets that we work on. My recommendation is we have them, but I haven't reviewed them completely. But what you do today will have a great determination on the long-term trajectory. So my recommendation is during one of your other budget committee meetings, such as June, you may want to consider possibly shifting it and making it a little earlier. We could go through long-term.
And I do think that once we publish this out, we are still by statute required to have a
10 business days.
Yeah. So bottom line is that we will have another one.
But we can't change in that 10 days,
But
can we?
well, this is what happens. You guys are going to do your changes today.
Yes.
You'll vote for it. We'll publish it out. We'll put it on the website. We'll notify all departments. When we notify them, it has to be at least 10 business days that you give them. My recommendation, you want to give them long enough, but you're down to that last plus. You're still waiting for the schools. So a pertinent thought may be you take your next regularly scheduled budget meeting, maybe move it to Tuesday or the week.
The June one, not the
June one, not the May. Move it because you're going to have schools off in that thing.
Okay.
Move it earlier, go through the hearings that you have left, because you've already had schools and each of the school setting hearings, and at the same time spend.
Do you go to the hearings during a regular budget meeting?
You know, at the beginning before, because you've still got long-term planning.
That's going to be, there may be more, that's going to be a late, that'll be a late.
Did you want to have another daytime one?
I think we will.
Okay.
I think let's.
I know it's hard on the committee members, some of them work, so that's why I'm recommending that.
Let's see what we get here. Let's see how far we get. And bottom line, to answer your point, Ms. Boyd, we will need another one. I mean, I understand the
They have a hard time trying to get
But like, we can also do it in afternoon where there are no other meetings, right? So like, we can have a block of.
You have another,
A whole
lot this one.
Yeah, so let's see how far we get. We will, by statute, we're gonna need another one anyway. I'm gonna try to avoid having two, because I do think, based on what you and I have spoken about yesterday, that we're quite close, to where we need to be.
So when the schools present, after that, if there's any changes, then you will have 10 days for them too. They will not get your budget until June 1st, so there's a potential for two.
There's a potential for two, but for those, so for that stuff that we can control.
Right,
We've got one.
You've got one left, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm recommending you do. Once you get the schools locked down, that's
Yeah.
when we'll go back and we'll put on the screen with all your calculations like we always do, your long-term
And
plan.
guys, we're well ahead of schedule here in terms of what we have to have a budget presented by the state, right? So we're doing just fine.
Ideal would be to have it approved by June 30, but you have until the last day of August. Without special approval, and
We've never done it.
you're not gonna get special approval, you're not gonna get special
So
approval, so.
we're fine.
So we're not gonna spend through completely.
No. We've got time, but I also want to, I don't want the up or down. I want our departments to have some good, we've got hundreds of employees out there in town like what's happening, and we want to give.
Part-time, you have about 1,100.
Yeah, we want them to know, and I don't
That's what I
want.
think too.
Yeah. Okay. Any other, any comments?
Just a question,
Yeah.
how short were we after the last meeting?
So that's gonna.
Number one thing I'm going through.
Yeah, we're gonna start with that, because
I wanna show you because,
there's some assumptions that we can flex with.
right, there's assumptions involved and where you guys really wanna be and where you're at. And I'm gonna try to show you as quickly as possible in a very short snippet.
You're leading us where we wanna go, and with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Let's pop up here, Bethany, there's a new sheet over here right beside the general fund that says, it says general fund status. Back, can you scroll this out, because I made it big to make it viewable, and now it's going to give it to you. This, that is not a sheet going back. Is there another? You keep going back, you don't have to hold it. Shrink it down more, you don't have to hold the table. So, there you go. Keep going. Can everybody, go back there, I want to see the table. Looks pretty good. Can everybody see the table?
Yes.
Very important. This is their fund balance. This is the year I came in, 2002. This is their fund balance back then, around $11 million. You are at $41 million over the time you've grown. This is what I'm calling, this is for a better word, let's just call it the delta. That's the difference between your budgeted unassigned revenues and your budgeted unassigned appropriations. And we'll change, okay? We all know you've got a fairly good sized budget, so your budget should be the statutory limit, so you should have turned over funds. We can't necessarily count on those, but we can kind of guesstimate where those are going to be over time based on trend. Number two, the one that we have the most is we estimate revenues. The county historically has estimated very conservative revenues because we don't know when a recession is going to happen, and you don't want to be telling people that you're not able to cover the appropriations of the county fund. So we've all planned for a recession. You're in the banking world, we're way past the time for a recession. We all know the economy because of COVID and everything's really skewed. So that's why you've got this huge uptick. We've been thinking for the economy, so we can't guarantee the revenues. But we can show you one thing. Last year, we budgeted pretty close. You are a little over $1 million up, and this is the delta for the 2 years, going $4 million and $3 million. Okay, the delta is the difference. This is how much we went up.
The delta is the difference between
Budgeted revenues, appropriations.
Appropriations.
For only your unassigned fund balance, those changes, because the reason being is your restricted funds are for restricted purposes you can't use them. Well, there's more restricted funds, there's restricted for these are just restricted funds only in your general fund. We're just looking at your general fund because that's your fund with your problems, okay? So let's go on down. I know the chart's pretty, let's do the slide right here, and this is what your delta looks like this year. If you compare to that, you think you're really great, but the issue we've got because of COVID and health, we've got several grants in there. So most of you understand modified.
Can we take a pause real quick about why we want to keep, this is a good visual for what we were talking, thank you for putting this together. This is a good visual for what we were talking about yesterday, about how much burn down the county. If this goes to zero, you're in a deficit spending, is that a correct?
That's a correct.
You're in a what?
If this line goes to zero or negative, you are in a deficit.
Go on a when you go back and grab this lower.
So you
When you truly are going to see when you're actually spending fund balance, if you see this, it's there's 1 year where we had like a $500,000 use of fund balance above the year. That was in a year that we really planned to use fund balance for one time. So when you're truly reaching a deficit, it was when this line goes down, which you can see these lines right there. These are based on conservative revenues and a growing budget with unspent appropriations, so we've kept this fairly constant.
keep it flat.
Well, we kept it fairly constant. Let's go down and show you where you're at right now. This is where we show, if you look on your main budget page on the sheet, and we'll go over there and look in a minute if you want to. You've got about 1.7 million, which is significantly less than, it's significantly less than either one of these, but there's a couple of things in play. You have grants. So a prime example is this one right here. You've got the health department. We're getting ready to drop a PO. We're going to show the budgetary expenditure is coming out of your fund balance. We're not going to claim any revenues next year, so all those revenues show up in 26. So it's really skewing that number, so I try to eliminate the skew. So when we pull it back in, it would be somewhere around there. This was your delta last year. It's about 955, 955,000 some odd change. And I put the change on the end just to show you that it's the most significant. That's how much you actually pick up on that delta. But two things, you look at that a little smaller than here, and the other thing you really got to look at, that same year you picked up almost $1.3 million worth of revenue. So what I'm looking at right now in a normalized year, you're going to, where you're at right now, pick up fund balance. The thing is, if you think it's going to be a significant recession, then you're at the point where you probably need to keep closing the delta. If you think it's going to be a normalized economy, you're actually going to pick up. If you want to be somewhere in between, you're pretty close to the number you're wanting to hit right now. But yes, ma'am.
The 1.3 that we picked up, was that from sales tax?
No, that's not. No. Your sales tax is all over in your capital projects now.
Okay, so how did we pick? Was it a surprise?
It's a couple of things. We always have. Just think of a certain things and go. You've got probably near 100 revenues. Would that be close? 90. We have lots of revenue. You got court fees. You got EMS fees.
Yeah.
You've got property taxes. Property taxes is relatively stable, but you got to think of things. There's appeals that happen all throughout the year, so I take those appeals out because you're not reasonably assured. And we usually come out better. Also, the last couple of years, we've had a 98% collectability on your property tax. What that means is your tax roll, you're collecting between 97 and 98% of that. But those are historically high. So I've been using 97.5 and 97, putting those appeals in there. And then historically, we've actually came in some years actually picked up, you picked up more add-ons than your appeals. That's where you're picking up one of your amounts. Then the other thing is we changed the building fee structures, and I've been really conservative on building permits because a lot of these are worried about growth, and there's been a somewhat push to slow growth. Well, based on your building permits, I've kept those flatter down, but it's really not done that because your building permits are historically high.
Right now they are.
They have been the last couple of years, so that's where you're picking up money. Same thing. So you've got, I don't know, across the general fund, 90 to 100 revenues, and we've been conservative for a large budget, so you're picking up those numbers.
Okay. So
your other numbers, that's just part of it, and that's the smallest unit. The other is you've got a budget with last year, and I'd have to pull the number. We're just going to say the number because we know it's that $100 million. If everybody spent 97% of $100 million, you're going to pick up $3 million by itself. So you've got to think those two interplaying. So your delta, where I'm looking at it right now, there's a very good chance that you're going to pick up my balance of that number. But if you want to take the most pessimistic approach and you're worried about tariffs and the recession's coming this year and it's going to be worse than 08, 09, then yes. But the other thing you've got to remember is you're also at a historically high fund balance. And I know our appropriations is growing every year, but these years here, when we've been really conservative, we've had some really large pickups. So just in a nutshell, what I'm saying is if you think you're going to be anywhere near a normalized economy and you're going to leave those 3 cents in there, then you are pretty much balanced. The other thing you gotta think is, we're looking at it long term, because what we're trying to do, and that's what me and Matt talked about several times. You go on down there. We want to try to keep this number less than your budgetary savings and your revenue safely in that mark. We feel we're in that next year. The 3 cents coming over from debt service, as we talked about last year, are reoccurring funds. If you remember, when we started, you had some one-time funds and some reoccurring funds from general debt service. Your reoccurring funds that you could move forever and still balance your debt service, because we've got a flat amortization schedule. You've actually got around, I'm going to read you the amount, and everybody has this sheet from yesterday. When you started, you had about $14.7 million, and you've moved about 3.3 out of that. So you still got well over $11 million sitting out there. So overall, what I'm seeing on your long-term trajectory looks pretty good.
Yeah, so to be clear, that 12 cents, assuming that 3, that is what will keep this flat. Is the ability, because if that gets down to 0, and you don't have anywhere else to draw from, this starts dropping off.
And because we all know one truth here, your property tax, some of your revenues do, but one of your large revenues puts a significant pressure on your property taxes. Does not capture inflation.
Now look,
it captures growth, but it don't capture inflation.
So to be clear, this is just a really good graph, man. Okay? Like what you're doing is like building layers. You're building layers of baking in what we know will be some level of growth over the next several years, right? Like that's what we've been trying to do here is instead of having like, oh my goodness, there's a train in front of us and we have to have a tax increase, we can see the spin several years out. So look, 12 cents, this is still flat. Let's say that's 5 years, 2 to 3 pennies this year plus 4 more. You've got before this. Well, this thing's completely flat. After that, you've still got, you're still in the positive in terms of fund balance growth at that point. So you've still got a year or 2 of runway before you're worried. And beyond that, you've got other triggers you can pull, right? Like before you're ever worried about a property tax increase. I'm not saying we want to do this now, but 5, 6, 7 years down the road, you've got that half-cent sales tax that the cities have. That's probably nice. 0.5%, sorry. That's probably 11 million.
Well, maybe we looked at Hendersonville, but we haven't looked at.
We didn't look at Gallatin, so it's millions.
Well,
when everybody's interested,
my point is that we don't need to worry about that right now because we built this.
But we'll never get those millions we decided to do.
The
taxpayers will have to.
If you do the referendum, what happens is the amount that's going to the school or going to the city, the amount that's completely going, that second half would go to your school department. So if your school department has to have funds and you're looking down at a property tax, one of your options is you referendum countywide and they pick up the second half of the unincorporated and they pick up that second half of the increase, that last 0.5% from the 2 large municipalities over into the school departments. So right now your school department's not getting that money, but I want cities.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, just a quick question. Would that half of the tax, those city taxes, if we got that through a referendum, the money goes, all of that money goes to the schools, would that be included in their MOE?
Yes, but yes and no on your the first statement, because the second half of the incorporated area, that increase would go to the schools. The increase, that was the new increase in the second half of the county would go to schools. The second half of the first half of the county, let's just say, the other half, the increase on that would be available to the county commission for any allowable legal purpose.
And on top of that,
so you would pick up some in our county too.
On top of that, you could reduce all we are on the hook for is a total amount for MOE. So yes, it would go into that, but you could reduce the property tax again, which we did last time.
Right.
So that they could still get a bump, a good bump, but we would collect more of it to the general fund as well. And I'm not saying we want to do that now. We don't need to do that right now. It's a bullet in the vaccine.
It would relieve our need to pay for our first line.
Make sure, David, what MOE means maintenance of effort. cover the TISR TASR amount too. There's a matching in there, but my understanding is you're significantly above. You're significantly above that, but, so that's all, and that's your matching.
So let me summarize one more thing here, David. So look, at the end of the day, what we're gonna need to make a decision on, all of these are based around assumptions. So the decision we need to make is, we have that million or so that we need to close. We've gotten some in. That million, 1.2 or wherever we were at, was based on some fairly pessimistic assumptions. And I personally don't want to assume a standard year, but I don't know that we need to assume a 6-month recession anyway. So, there's a sliding scale we can put in there that would, between that and what we've had come in as, a minimal cut, we can probably close that gap and we may be able to build that.
But one more very important thing to remember is, if you say you determine a normalized year, correct? The two places that you have the most pressure on is debt service, which has a strong reserve, and your county general fund. So the thing is, one of the reasons I have strong reserves is if you want to see a more normalized economy, because recessions are generally temporary unless the whole world changes, then it could be used to cover that shortage or delta or whatever you want to call it, and then the next year you get more normalized. That's what, what it's for. The only one I caution you for, the same thing we talked about sales taxes, remember the $6 million in the Department of Education though, if you overestimate their revenues, they potentially create a reserve in addition and it hits them twice. So you do need to be very cautious on their projections.
Oh, Mr. Harrison.
Just 2 points to clarify. Based on this delta,
Yes, sir.
what builds that is underestimating revenues,
And
which is small. I mean, that's how you build it, and overestimating expenses.
right.
So it's, and the 1.2 that we got to was based on making cuts, like with sheriff's deputies, paramedics, those kinds of things, which scares me because growth is what's going to add to those numbers. Building permits are not down no matter how many actions we've taken to try to slow growth. It's not slowing. So.
And I booted that up this year. I booted in this number. I have increased your building permits, but not, if I would take your trend line, all else assuming equal and all, I would have it much higher, but there's two things in play. We do know the tariffs and stuff. We don't know how it's going to affect because it is going to affect building materials.
It will.
But everybody's talking about potential interest rate decreases, so we don't know really what's going to happen there. But there's also a push because there's a lot of congestion. There's been I guess, a somewhat push from the county to slow growth, is my understanding from what I'm seeing. I don't want to speak for anybody at the table.
Sure.
But so it makes me more cautious on your adequate facilities tax and debt service, your building permits over in the general fund, and your planning, for rezoning over in your general fund. It does make me more cautious. And as you know, I'm pretty cautious anyway. I'm not going to paint you a rosy picture.
I'm just saying that the growth numbers indicate that, in my estimation,
we should be more
cutting sheriff's deputies and paramedics is probably not a good idea, which is why we got to that 1.2 or whatever to begin with.
And say overestimate expenditures, each department makes their request. I think they make good faith estimates. What generally happens, why you end up with those, they think they have to replace equipment. They're worried about fuel. And what we've had in the past, a lot of times, and ECC is a prime example, they were set up several years back, but they've had significant issues in recruitment. So every year they turned a lot back because of vacant positions they really needed. EMS was having that about 2 years ago. And then in the jail, the sheriff's department still faces the same issue. They can't fill the positions in the jail, so they have all these vacant positions they're trying to fill but can't fill. So that's where a lot of your money comes from, and gas prices and other things.
That's right.
Over last year, what is this budget, what kind of increase do we see this budget over last year, percentage-wise?
Now, this is going to be going down, and this is going to be, I'm going to have to tell Mr. Hyde, I don't want to deceive anybody here. Looking at on the top, you're saying 2.57, but going up, Ms. Browning, we don't care. That number's hard to say because you have, this is ARPA, where we know we're planning to spend, probably going to carry that $37.5 million worth of ARPA, that's the carryover on that. And do you remember, in Dave's where he's in Gen Ops, and I think about all, we actually have the SWIG up in, which is the water project up in Portland and West Portland, that were the main entity. We picked up another one, $1.8 million this year on it. Those two are dropping out, so it's going to sway your number down, but at the same time, we've got the other one time, so if you really account for that, that's $6 million going down this round. So you'd have to add, really, if that's 2 and about 6, so you're really up about $8, $9 million, so that $6 million of $100 million last year was about 6%, so about 8.5, 9%, to be honest.
The budget is going up 8 or 9%.
Over last year.
Once we remove some of
Over last
those.
year, actually normalized, not normalized, but once you pull out those one-time funds, which are counted in right now, it should not be.
Well, the one thing that I'm concerned with is, the fact that the U.S. government is saying that the adjusted salary increase for Americans this year was 3%, adjusted 3%, between 3% and 3.6%. And we're increasing our budget 8 or 9. That is going to eventually be a problem when we can't budget what people are getting in salary increase. It's going to happen one day, and that is just something to think about. Then the other thing that bothers me a little is that it's sort of like what Commissioner Harrison said. I think we should be very selective about what cuts we're making, because there's some that will definitely hurt us in the long run if we make those cuts.
And as far as the CPI is 3% right now. The one that's hit you that's across the country for several years has been a problem with health insurance, and we were going to do the well, it was 5% this year. You've been building reserves in your health insurance, but, when I got here, there was a deficit back in 2009, and that time the agreement with the county commission was on the health insurance that, one, they infused a lot of cash, because I think me, you, and several other commissioners, I don't know if anybody else was here at the time, they would infuse cash, but with the insurance committee would set up 2 things. They would actuarially determine premiums, make sure it looks correct. And then number 2, they did a wellness program, and then they changed the split with employees from 80-20, 80% employee, 20% employee, 80% county. 15% employee, 85% county, to 20% employee, 80 county. Just flipped it around, about 25% increase. So that's one of your big cost drivers. And then another one we've seen a lot of pressure in is we've got it out for bid right now. It's not even came back, but what we're getting preliminary, and it's built in this budget, we may have to go adjust it again, is your we're fully insured, but our reinsurance for your liability, like on your buildings, or your liability or for loss of buildings, the reinsurance is quite significant this year too. That's 2 things that's driving the budget.
I understand.
And then overall growth of the county's been about 2% population.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and what I'm saying is not really measurable. But I'm just saying that if I'm a taxpayer sitting out here in Sumner County, and my salary by U.S. standards is adjusted, is only increasing somewhere between 3 and 3.6%, and our government is growing at 8 to 10%. They're having to make cuts to live within that, and they're wondering why we're not making cuts to live within our standards. That's all, and it's not anything that can really be measured.
No, and don't take me, I'm not disagreeing, I'm just trying to tell you what's built into the 8%, try to give you the details. Because that's really, you guys are the voting board on everything, I'm just here to provide information. But let's go back to the graph, and I want to, just to give you, because it's not really clear, and I did it on purpose. If you could just left click and add data point, we have that on, just click right there and left click. Just click again with it. I get it back when you just click it until you add data point. Add data. And then you pull it up out of there, and you do the same thing when I'm only doing it this way versus originally the way you can, after you've had a chance to kind of digest, you can see when we actually started. Now this will really get your attention, and this is going to definitely get Mr. Harrison's attention, because I think Mr. Shope, and I don't know if we can talk about this much or not, but talk about several things. We'll go ahead and do the one over that one. So, and while your budget's been growing all these years, this is, I think you're very conservative, and this is the reason. Including prospect, this is what you do. And click it one time. So click it one time. Click it, man. There you go. This is what's really going to show you, okay? But they'll remember the difference between budgeted unassigned revenues, you know, could be used for anything, and unassigned expenditures was about $3.2 million back in the year. Your fund balance is only 11.6, okay? Your budget's been growing year after year after year, because this is 2010, and we're up to, just looking at 14 years. The delta's 3.2, we're here at 3.5 now, your fund balance, I believe, 11. Your fund balance is 11.6. But now you're up here at 41 base. You got to think you went from 11.6 to 41 on your actual reserves, but your delta is only 3.33. So right now, long term, this number here can need to be slightly bigger based on normal because you've grown. So the county over time has been very conservative because we went on the same assumption. We do not know what the next year falls. We've been very, very conservative. What it does build your fund balance, which, you know, probably my point of view for a long-term view would be try to keep this as low as you can, and if this does get large enough, you could use it for one-time capital, just like you do for a capital project. So it's not a bad thing, but I want to show you to make sure you have the full perspective. So you're not in any kind of long-term trajectory for a tax rate because right now, if you hold everything else equal, no inflation, no increased expenditures from now on, you would forever, if nothing changed, based on actual estimate, you'd probably pick up fund balance. And those amounts we're talking about, the $3 million is actually reoccurring because you had about a difference between the amount needed to be moved back to debt service to make it flat for the next 11 years to what you have is about $14 million when you started. You're only looking at using it.
But here's the thing that you wouldn't understand. That, I'd like to respond a little bit to this point. Mr. Hopkins, you don't build something like that. And, you know, look, we can. What this really shows is, and I know there's a lot of consternation between all of the different commissions here, but at the end of the day, like they're all, you know, you can argue about the tax increases, but they've done a reasonable job for the last 14 years of building those reserves over time, right? I mean, all of us, like us previous and the ones previous to them. So, I mean, we're not in a bad spot. However, that's not done. It's done by little increments, right? The only real time we took up a big chunk is starting the 2020 tax increase. Like that was where it starts to diverge a little bit. But other than that, unless you want to have to say, hey, I'm going to get a tax increase, you're going to do this by like half millions and millions increments, and those get broken down into 300,000 here and 250 there. So my point is, and I know we don't want to make cuts, but if we want to give room for growth while also staying within Mr. Hyde's point of not outstripping what the average household is feeling, it would be easy to look at this and say, okay, well, we can just kind of do what we want, and guess what? We can get away with it for probably 2 solid years, maybe 3. But you, to Mr. Hyde's point, if we're not disciplined now, we will run into that train sooner rather than later. So we're in the margins. I think we can probably move on here.
That's why we trace this. And if you notice, this is big, but that's a couple of reasons, because the assumptions in number 2, remember there was a salary adjustment. So if you notice something, a lot of this huge growth isn't as much because, for instance, now EMS is pretty much field, aren't you? ECC is a lot closer to the field, so you're not going to have those sheer numbers of budgetary turnovers of revenue, so that's why I think right now we're cautiously, somewhere we're reading.
Let's to do this. I would like to, do you have an easy way to, and I know this is where these are taking expressions, do you have an easy way to toggle some of these assumptions of revenue growth?
You got about 90 revenue.
I know.
We probably need to have another, if somebody else look at revenue, we can have another.
I mean, I just,
Let's just go to the main revenue sheet and I can kind of discuss those.
Yeah.
We can go to the revenue sheets, but.
because what I'd like to do is, what I would like to get at soon is bake in the changes that the department have done and bake in any changes that we want to make.
Let's just mention a few articles.
Okay.
Commissioner Barnes talked about another day. On the 15th, you're gonna have new numbers, right? That would-
We're around there for sales tax.
So that's not far away, today's the 8th.
Well,
New numbers.
we can, I mean, but let's try to get to a balanced budget today. I mean, I
I
really
know, I
like
was just saying one other day, and I was like,
One thing I do want clarifications from the committee and Mr. Sophie, the chairman. Historically, what we've done, we've got current year projections in there too. We get better and better numbers. Next year's are reasonable estimates. We generally don't change those with these numbers right here that estimate your fund balance. I usually keep changing those until the last draft that you guys vote. Is the committee fine with that?
Absolutely.
It gets you a more accurate fund balance to budget. Few things I can tell you about it, just some quick assumptions. Property tax. We've been almost at 98. I did 97.5 last year. I had 97. We've had a long enough 27.5. I actually picked that up. The problem you got, if everybody remembers discussion, we had a reappraisal. There was about $1.4 million worth of appeals. I baked all the appeals in as being negative. We know that's not true. Some of them's been picked up, but there may be appeals next year we don't know about, so I just kept with the 1.4 countywide. Not a huge number. In the session back there, we'll talk later, he's seen several of those positively. I got to pull the numbers. For me, I got to be in touch with the lady from the State Board of Equalization where we could pull the numbers down, and I considered all those as lost appeals. So those are out of your numbers. This one right here, we talked about that one. We are in this range here. We've been in these ranges, usually growing. I brought that back up to this range. Talking to, which is true, and you can go back and trace that hotel tax goes up and down like crazy based on whatever everybody wants to do. The understanding from the guy that's actually running the department is he thinks the losses are based on the presidential election starting to turn around quickly. So mine is, I think, the most prudent because we're pretty conservative on a lot of other numbers is actually running with that, and that's what we talked about. Your business tax, that's a very conservative number. It follows, if you look here, if you follow the pattern, it's a very conservative pattern. It's based on your average trend. And because we do have concerns next year, I think I brought the trend down from probably about 2 or 3%. Is the overall trend like 97% trend, not 97%. I don't have them all in my head. Building permits one, if you look, I mentioned maybe the same for 2 years, but it is a huge uptick. 2, you guys are on the new, or whatever the schedule is. So it automatically has some upticks, which did happen this year. They're automatically set in. But if you look at the overall number, it's historically high. This year, I did not, by any means, bring it down from where I think you're going to be. There's a push to slow you down, but my thing is there's 2 things at play. One, you are growing about 2% population. We all know there's tons of developments out there. And then the number 2 issue you've got, you do have $41 million worth of reserves. So if you run short, I don't know, $100,000 on that, it's not going to significantly impact you in the size of your budget.
David?
Yes, sir.
Permits, is that only county permits, or does that include municipal?
That's the county permits.
Only county?
Only county, you still have your own permits, but we do get adequate facilities tax countywide.
Is that part of permits?
It's not part of permits, it's a tax.
I mean, is it in that dollar?
No, it is over, we can look at sales tax in just a minute if you would like.
Okay.
Well, I've got those very conservative, but remember, they're over debt service, and your adequate facilities tax that we have in the county can only be used for a couple of purposes. School renovation, construction, or debt related to school. Right now, we have it all for debt related to school. That's where it all fits in with debt service.
By the way, we don't want to move that.
You need to pay the debt unless you're going to be.
Yeah, I'm on the planning commission, I'm just not seeing that many permits, so that's.
They are coming through, and we can talk to you upstairs in the building.
A lot of our administrative plan, we approved.
That's true,
And there were some changes a couple of years back. You started picking up pools because you're actually sending people out. So you started charging for pools. Plus, you have a schedule based on the code. So the code schedule changed based on the prices. So it was set in years ago. So it's what you need to do to try to keep your fees covering your service. That's part of it, but a lot of this is to do, you've got a population growth that's about 2%. You used to average about 1.75, so you sped up on your growth of the actual population. These are your fines and fees, they're all over the place. If you go back to 2019, remember the court shut down. You do have a new judge, and everybody's talking about putting more revenue, but my only concern is, if the judge is handling the backlog, when you get the backlog, we don't know where it's reasonably at. So I'm reasonable. Do I think these are undershot? I'm about 98% sure those are undershot. But my problem is, because of COVID, there's backlogs we're picking up, it's still going through the system. We've got a new judge to speed up the backlog, so if you look at these numbers, they're very skewed because of two things. COVID shut them down. So you have backlogs, everybody's picking them up, and it's still working down. Now we've got the judges going to speed them up, but once they catch up, where are you going to be? Is it catch up more this year or next year? These numbers look good. I'm thinking they're going to be spread, but I think the majority has been hit this year, a lot of it. So this year, I think it's going to be more normalized to, see how big that one is? Yeah. I have it right in here still, because I would like it, cautiously, probably more like you said. You don't have a trend. So mine, I'm very conservative. We can go through, I can show you the trends on these, you know, I don't know, what, 90 revenues. I mean, we can go through.
To me, the simplest one is you scroll up. Patient shortage. If you look at property tax, you already put that in.
There you go. We have it as a flat amount, I'll show you.
But you pulled out what, 1.4 million?
1.33267 times 3.
So you could probably put plus 250,000 in there and you get it.
You know what, I could go back.
I think you could
I could go back and look at the assessor, and we can look at those appeals again. But the issue being, the assessor don't know what the appeals are going to be for next year. It's better to leave those appeals in to keep you guys safe, because it's like, our commissioner here was talking about sales tax. And when she's talking about sales tax, if we're really conservative on property tax and sales tax does take nosedive south, then we'll still pick a lot of other schools because they have quite a bit of property tax. I think it's Commissioner Moore using that. Was that correct?
That's my name, yeah.
Well, no, I'll make sure that's right, Commissioner. I thought it was sales tax.
All right.
No, that's true.
So, this could be a huge exercise. What I'm trying to get at here is.
I'd still do 3 or 4 meetings if you want me to, right?
Yeah, just do the big ones, and then, because let's see what we could potentially find with the assumption change.
2019 killed the county here. We've had enough with connected for EMS forever. It's been recovering since we're here. We think this year you're going to meet revenue projections. Several years you haven't. Talking to our EMS director based on his current calls, and he said probably even higher than that, but conservatively he felt comfortable in those numbers. So, I work with these departments too based on the calls we've got. If you look at several of them, you notice they're not exactly. This is one we talked about earlier when it came in last year. If you look at the note, there was a discussion there was going to be additional people coming in for probation and an additional fee, but that never happened, so we did increase that by 195. I think the law director and the judge, I don't know if the judge discussed it either, but the law director did. He did not have any probation last year, but he got this year.
Was there a specific item you were asking about?
Oh, no, we're talking about.
I've got it now.
You've got it now,
Yeah.
but the additional, what we're saying right now, the additional, you have a for-profit and then a county probation. My understanding was they kind of divided based on the amount of work that's out there, amount of capacity. We increased an employee to pick up more capacity, to do more classes, but what I'm seeing right now, you haven't increased the number of probations. So pick up the employee with no additional cases.
And there's 2 factors. I've been talking to the judges about this, about getting everything online or onboarded to the probation side, and the number of classes that job was set up for have decreased significantly. Those charges have, and then I'm just waiting on, this is fresh conversation on getting all of the contracted work back over to the probation department, so it's in flux. I don't know what those numbers will project at.
This really large number here is 68% of their expenditures is the flow through. If the expenditures aren't expensed, the revenues don't come, so it's a zero sum except for 30%. These are all your
I
constitutional laws.
just want to clarify, is that what the cities pay for their share?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, clarification, thank you.
Going down, these I feel are all conservative. We can revisit any of you like these. This flows through from the state, it's for the law enforcement training supplement, and it flows directly to expenditures, dollar for dollar. It may go up or down a little bit, it's based on the number of people that qualify. And then we got a lot of grants. This is the amount that you guys get for state based on the number of SRO, employees, that's another large number. This one is DGA, it's the same thing, it's the 100% flow-through grant we talked about. DDA sharing, this is one that's historically been up, but this year it's actually down, using a little taxes from Tennessee Valley. So, what I do on that, I usually estimate next year what we're receiving this year because it's all over the place. That was based on where we were going last year, and it didn't happen. Prisoner board, same thing as what I think on the current capacity, and when I talk to the sheriff, they thought it was going to be pretty stable. Not a lot of new losses.
Can you go back up?
That's who state prisoners.
100,000. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a faulty grant. I was just wondering, there hasn't been anything in the past, we budgeted 100, we're still budgeting 100, but we have no activity.
That is the broadband ready.
So it's new?
Well, not really, it's a broadband ready grant. It's down in Portland. For a better word, it was sent up to finance in November, December, when you set everything up. We've been working on it. We ran into some issues about the way the grant's written and bid. So we're working on bidding it, reworking it, and getting it workable, but we've got to get approval from the state for the changes, so we don't think it's going to be expended or, I think it's received next year, but I can't remember what we're on that bid. We've only received it next year, expended, that's some stuff. I'd have to look and see. We're not planning to receive the money next year, but I can't remember if we're going to spend the money this year or it'll be over the year. We can talk about it.
It just caught my eye to see what it was, but there was nothing there.
100% flow through. We're working on the grant as quick as we can upstairs. Tire disposal will flow through that over to your resource authority. They dispose of the tires. The grant has to go through the county. The state pays us, and we pay it on over to the resource authorities where you bring, where your provider brings your own tires. This is the Hendersonville remodel. That's what I was talking about earlier. That's making the Delta skewed. Your commissioner back here. That's the 2.7. All these expenditures we're estimating we're going to have POs and stuff over here, but we're not going to receive the revenue over there. Because when we do a PO, we type the money, we show it as a budgetary expenditure, but we don't receive the revenues that we claim. I mean, under modified accrual, any revenue received in these funds have to be received within like a general revenue about 30 days, for a grant or grant type, 60 days. That's their policy. These are all small, but if there's anybody's in particular concern, because we can spend probably, we can pull up the sheet and spend 3 or 4 days on this, but is there any particular revenue you'd like me to look at? Other than that,
I would be interested in, maybe it makes sense to go and, we can do this one of two ways. We can look at where we're at after we make in the changes from the department and then come back here. Or if you have, I mean, because I made that one suggestion, you had already said that if you have any places where you think we could pick up, 400,000, 500,000 between them, that, with a reasonable change in assumption, we can do that.
I can reasonably change assumptions to pick it up, because two things you got to remember. If I do that and you don't meet the revenues when it's coming out of your fund balance, and check that one's $41 million.
Yeah, no.
You're not exactly going to be in bad shape.
Oh, no, I know that, but I also don't want that blue line to be a feeder.
Right.
We want to be, we're talking about between what they're bringing in and a change. I think we're looking at a change here of, $400,000 half. So, what we can do, maybe it's the right way to go about it. Is bake in what has been brought, and then, we're within $500,000. We can give you the leeway to go and make some small changes and just point out where those are. Maybe that's the right way to progress. Anybody have a problem with that?
Everybody's fine. Discussing more revenue.
I had a question, and it kind of flows back to Mr. Heisenberg's point about the growth. And there are several line items that we have that are new line items that we haven't had in the past. When I was going through, I thought, I don't know, they're not 400,000, but we do have new line items. and before I'd asked, the ask went out for everybody to cut deeper. And I was just remembering to look at the new line items that have never been there before. Before we.
Still, they're baked into they're in there.
But we can go to when she.
I mean, were you suggesting like we adjust them up or down, or?
Well, I just don't know what they are. I mean, there's some in there that they're just there, and if we've asked people to go back and cut it.
Well, right, but my point is that, like, and look, I'm trying to do it, but
It's not
they're-
400,000.
they're already baked into it. So it's like, if they're already baked into to our overall revenues.
Well, it's part of the, I thought we were having an ongoing discussion.
I think what
I'm okay with that.
I think that's what she's saying, is she would like to evaluate new expenses first, which would be.
New expenses or new revenues?
Those new lines.
The new ones that
Those
we've never had, let's say,
New expenses.
let's say somebody bought an
elephant.
elephant, somebody bought an elephant, and, you know.
Yeah.
Before I ask, EMS to cut more, I'd like to go with.
All right, I mean, we can
That's all
do
I'm
that.
Can I discuss the
Yeah,
two
go ahead.
revenues, and then,
Sorry.
if you're fine, then we can work, you want to work with Ms.,
Well, let's do this, so we, go with the two new revenues, and then, because we can get to that, but I know you had a plan to go through
All this,
some
okay.
of the changes, but if
Yeah,
you're
just,
good
I
with
was
that.
just saying before we,
Yeah, that's
call
fine.
it off.
but we can do either way, I can go through these emails and the changes,
Okay,
or we can go and approach brand new expenses before we can go to.
let's go with the plan, show your revenues, let's go through the changes, and then we'll pick up the new expenses.
I can go either direction you want. Let's go up to how payment with taxes we discussed. Because something's gonna look weird, maybe ask on commission for it, I can explain it. 100% was in the beginning of that. She's got big numbers, too. It's called, maybe I'll look at it.
I know.
If you notice, we only budgeted 152, we've got 449, only budgeted 106. The reason being is, there's a reason is, we received money from a Facebook. And I've been talking to our county law director. The IDB from Gallatin's arguing that they can do anything they want to. With my understanding right now, that's their argument, that they can do anything they want to. The IDB in Gallatin, the Industrial Development Board, argument is that they can do anything they want to with the payment in lieu of taxes money from Facebook. They made some payments this year based on the tax rate, which looks like we deposited here.
How much was the original agreement?
It's based on millions. It's
How much
based,
was the share to the county?
it's based on millions.
We will fight that in court, I'm in court all day with that.
And we've got, I think a copy of the agreement. I discussed that with,
We got $40 balance here, let's go to court and collect that, right?
but there's millions involved in that. That's the reason I did not put it into your
Put it in
revenue.
there, and then we'll budget $100,000.
Well, see, like, it's based on phasing in, so I have to know what phase they're in.
Well,
And he did this phase calculation, and I can't get a lot of data from it. I've had issues getting data from it.
we'll,
If I get it or not.
that's millions of dollars of revenue.
And then I was just revenue on debt service fund.
Oh, that is the shadiest thing.
You wouldn't believe,
We've had that discussion
yeah,
for a while.
you see how deep it goes, shady.
Who's
I'm not thinking I'm not saying-
Who's in charge of that? Who's the president of that board?
I have no
You know,
idea.
when they put it in, they hired somebody, I believe,
I need a name.
to come.
All right.
Well,
we'll
there's-
find a name on that one.
Which board are you talking about, Matt?
The Industrial Development Board of Gallatin.
Yeah.
Because they're wanting to argue that what they gave on donation. and what they-
It's on the website, but,
We'll find it.
I think they did it legally.
Although that contract says that they're in, basically, for verbatim, you may correct me, that they're responsible for how it's paid to the city and county, it doesn't say they can do anything else with it.
yeah, this is an in lieu of taxes.
Right.
But here's the thing,
They're making that
here's the
argument.
thing, I mean, look, we'll bake that in, we need to bake something in there, a little bit, and that will be my little special project next year. Like, take me off of all boards, and I'll just do that.
What I'll do is for the next budget, if we make a note, I'll calculate the amount it brought this year based on the tax rate.
How much do you know how much that went to the city of Gallatin?
Yeah, they sent it to me, I can provide that to you, I don't have it on hand.
Did you have a round number?
It makes sense based on the tax rate. So basically, what they look like, they just.
So we're getting an even, we got an even cut.
I think we got materially.
It's
correct amount.
Okay, then that's cool.
But I think the argument is they don't have to pay it.
Well,
Which makes me on the point where I don't necessarily feel comfortable with that, without being aware of the budget.
Today, we file in court. So,
note those and we'll handle that. Let's go over here to, debt service, if you can go down to adequate facilities package. This is your adequate facilities package for today, Commissioner Klein. This is what I budgeted next year, that's what you got this year. That's conservatively the rest of the year because those things are all over the place. That's your actual last year, so if we pull this little sum there, let's show you what you got. We've got a total of a little over $4 million. This year I conservatively estimated we've got 3.6, probably gonna be closer to the 4, and the next year, because we don't know, I'll estimate 3.118. So to be honest, this number here is probably low, but it is very hard to estimate because the reason you don't, when the permits are first got, is when they get there. So there's something in the pipeline that'll be received quite a bit before the actual construction.
But it's actually dropping.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is your last actual year. I've taken this year because they're so volatile. I've taken that trend and I moved it down quite a bit. And then because we do have concerns on tariffs, and there wasn't a push to slow down construction, I brought the number down again here. So that number's probably low. It's based on a couple of factors. Number one is the tariffs could increase construction costs. And number two, there's been a push to slow growth. But at the same time, if you read the other day, there's discussions of lowering the interest rate. We all know if they lower the interest rate, lowers your house payment, housing becomes more affordable. But if the tariffs increase the cost of construction, become less affordable, so they slow down. So we don't know where that's going, but I've been reasonably, for the best word, pessimistic on that. Just want to make everybody aware of that, because there was a question about it. And that's the only somebody's got a particular revenue that they've got questions about.
I think we're good. So I think we'll move on now. Does anybody have any questions?
So what we got from the pilot on Meta Facebook, they did cut us a check last year.
And it was reasonable.
They cut us a check this year.
This year, and it was how much?
Yeah, that was the difference of almost, just in the general fund, and I can get you the exact number, it's much more than that.
Yeah,
Okay.
But it was in line with what we would have expected.
If you could just remind, when we go to break, I can go up and pull it
Yeah,
out.
I'd love to see it, because that's one of those things.
I only mentioned because we have a large variance, but they did provide to us what they paid to the city of Gallatin, us, and they made a separate payment to the school department, but they were, my understanding, what they were communicating to us is that is a donation, and they're not required to give it to us. That's why I'm very cautious.
They're gonna donate to their lawyers.
And the only other question, and I just want to make sure I understand, is our property tax revenue went from $45.5 million to $50.5 million. That's about a 10% increase.
You moved 3 pennies from debt service, that's most of your increase, or a lot of your increase. Remember yesterday, if we click on that there. Remember yesterday, not yesterday, but on the first.
The next one.
I'll say last night later. There's 1,126,367 times 3 moved over from debt service.
Oh, okay, so that's.
And remember the discussion, you had 14 million reoccurring extra dollars in debt and capital, which could be used as one to cover operational, because it's permanent property, pennies. Or you can use it to, for future if you have more capital, or if you want to keep some debt capacity.
Okay.
That's the 3 most advantageous uses of those bills.
So the vast majority of that difference is.
Not the vast, but a significant portion.
Yeah.
And I can click over highway, because there's a change, and we can tell you about what the growth was, if you want to see the actual growth, it's much smaller. But yeah, that's skewed your number.
Okay.
So again, bottom line, how much are we looking for?
Let's go click back on, if you reasonably want to get your bill almost exactly the same as last year, you're looking probably at $955. If you want to get to where your fund balance is flat, you're probably already there based on the finish. And that's based on a cautious revenues is the best way to put it.
So just humor me a minute. So I made this motion at the last meeting, and I realize it's a capital project. But when we're telling the sheriff's office, EMS, and these other departments to cut, and yet we're gonna spend, or a lot, $2 million on courtroom. And I know it's capital. I made the motion to move it back into capital. What if we moved it back and moved 5 pennies over?
You would be in the green, for a better word. My best estimate, you should be picking up the fund balance.
But you would just be doing that for 1 year.
Just for a year.
But that's.
But we're gonna go through the same exercise next year. I mean, we don't know what revenues are gonna be next year.
But yeah, but it is, but this is, we can argue about this, but here's the thing. You don't wanna start replacing one time with recurring. And that's exactly what that would do.
Well, that's what you're doing anyway with 3 pennies.
Well, no, because I'm going from recurring to recurring. I'm going from debt service, which is recurring, into capital, which is a holding bin, into, if you go from the extra, at the end of the day, those 5 pennies are coming out of debt service. Those 5 pennies trace themselves back to,
Well, there are recurring every penny goes.
Yeah, I mean, the point is you're tracing it all back from recurring. So the idea that if I take this courthouse out of it, then I'm suddenly not gonna have an impact on my long-term.
My argument is that I don't like prioritizing convenience over public safety.
Can I ask?
Go ahead.
The mayor, it's very important, this question, and the mayor John may know. Have they approached you yet to sign the contract for the architect on that? It went through Gen Ops, we were trying to get it locked down, and they're gonna bring it to you. I don't know if it's made it to the mayor, we may already have it on the architect. That's what I mentioned last time, it was going to Gen Ops the following Monday, and as soon as it got done, we were gonna try to lock it down and get it back to the mayor, and I don't know if it's made it all the way back around to the mayor yet, because I've got a lot of stuff.
I can tell you I've not signed off on it because it is still in flux.
Because if it's still in flux and he hasn't signed off, then we can wholeheartedly back out of that and not do the project. Without costing anything, we can do it anyway, just pay for the architect.
On that note, the architectural fee is around $89,000. They reduced it $27,000. But that architect has also come back and said the estimate for the improvements is gonna be about $1.5 million rather than $2 million.
And I'm kind of cautious on it. If he's saying $1.5 million, but everybody's been talking about one thing, we haven't bid it yet.
Right.
Tariffs and costs. But the only reason to be fair about why the architect's cheaper is we already had designs from the earlier architect, and that's one of them when I asked the project manager upstairs, one of my requests was when you negotiate that before you bring it back to our mayor, we need to ask them to kick off the portion for design because they're usually a percent of construction.
I still think.
Design, this, that, we already had design, so the fee went down because the design was already paid for and they were willing to use the design from the other.
I know we were talking about, we don't often try to take a ton of motions here, but do you want to try to make that motion again? I will, go ahead. Do you want to make a motion to move pennies or do something?
Yeah.
What's the motion?
The motion is to claw back the $2 million that's allotted for the courtroom, put it back in capital and move 5 pennies over.
So both of those?
Both of those in the same motion.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
I can't second both of them combined.
I can't either. If you want to do one or the other.
Okay. I'll put the $2 million back in capital.
Okay. Is there a second on that one?
Oh, I'll second that.
All right, so we have a second for that, and then we want, so we're on that. Let's discuss.
Oh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Protocol. We have a committee of 7. Now, is it 4 to pass, or is it the majority of the city?
It's still 4 to pass.
I just want to clarify.
Eric, I thought it was the president, I thought it was majority president.
Still.
Yeah, I think it's
2, 3, 4, 5.
I just want to make sure.
If they're majority president, I do believe.
Yeah, once you have a quorum, then
Okay,
it's
so
the
it's
majority.
just 3.
That's what I was thinking, I didn't want to contradict.
Okay.
Okay, I've got a question. If we defund that, if we claw it back, and I'm as bothered about it as Commissioner Harrison, the fact that we were forced into this position, and I think that the architectural fees are still high, and I think the improvement costs are still high. What is going to happen then? We've got a judge.
I think what we're saying is we're trying to fund what we need to fund this year. But let me speak for
Yes.
myself.
Okay,
My
go ahead.
statement is that when we're asking the sheriff, EMS, to cut these positions, and yet we're turning around and building out a courtroom, that is already drivable.
Yes.
We are in effect saying to the public, to the average, because the average taxpayer does not understand capital money versus recurring. They don't understand that.
Yeah.
What they hear is you're cutting sheriff's deputies and paramedics for convenience. That's what they're hearing. So what I'm saying is, let's cut it for a year and take a look at the numbers next year. That's all my argument is.
Did you have another comment? I'm gonna get my own cue. Go ahead.
Well,
I'm getting curious.
there is another place for it, though, that we could get the sheriff all of the money that we clawed out last week. And it has to do with the improvements of that police station, or the sheriff's station that was vacated by the 3 judges. Yeah, so currently the sheriff is in about 3,000 square feet, his entire administrative staff. With the amendment that Mr. Harrison made at the last commission meeting, we're giving him an additional 23,000 square feet. I believe he doesn't need all that, and he sure doesn't need to improve it at $190 a square foot. We could claw some of that $4.5 million, give the sheriff everything he needs for cars, new officers, and everything, and still do the judicial.
Let me respond to this without this.
Okay.
So a couple things. One, and I'm not trying to pick on this comparison, but I am a citizen and have always been a citizen. And as an elected official, I don't think that I'm smarter than the average citizen. And I think the average citizen understands bank account, and they understand one-time savings account, and they understand their income and expenses that are recurring, just like, and I think that is not a concept that is beyond the average citizen. And now we want to talk about the average citizen. The average citizen is not an idiot, and is probably smarter than most of us sitting here. So I think they very much understand that recurring revenues, that spending that taking a one-time capital expense versus a recurring to pay for a salary that you will then bake into a maintenance of effort recurring year over year is not a difficult thing to understand. And because I recognize that, citizens are smart and they understand these things, I cannot support, I don't agree with the argument because it's not a good argument in my opinion. I'm not trying to pit here. I don't think it's a strong argument that, hey, if we kill this courthouse, we can pay for $2 million extra towards sheriff's EMS. Yes, you can pay for it 1 year, and then we got to pay them. So that's 5 pennies moved over. What about the next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that? Whatever we move, where I look, anything that I would be able to support, I want to know that I can pay for it year over year over year over year with the highly conservative estimates that Mr. Long has. So we can talk about funding or not funding the courthouse, and I'm fine to talk about whether we need that or not. But that is materially not taking a $2 million one-time fund is not going to shore up the recurring asks that the sheriff and EMS have. It's just not. That's factually untrue.
Are sheriff cars, are those recurring or are those capital?
Those are capital.
Those are capital.
That's what I want to go into. What we're
Yeah,
talking
so I'll hand it to you, Mr. Long.
Can I ask something about the
Go ahead.
police person stuff? Right now, in opioid, half of our money could go to police cars and ambulances because the opiate prices wore out our tires. Are we doing are we taking care of any, you know what I'm talking about?
You got the
I don't know
opioid.
if you could tell them what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there was the opioid committee. There's two pots of money for that. There's more restricted and unrestricted, and they can be used for certain purposes. Right now, you've got the
We haven't
opioid
been
committee.
hitting that. We could hit that for ongoing operational expenses for these emergency vehicles, because we're spending money.
And we can send up the amounts from the opioid committee, what you've got over there. I don't think it's a significant amount, because right now the problem we're running into is they gave us estimates for the next 20 years, and those estimates are in flux because, one, there was new defendants at times, but now there's bankruptcies. So bankruptcies have dropped, and Mr. Sibley can correct me if I'm wrong, bankruptcies have dropped some of the payments down and out for our opioids.
Oh, yes, that's why whenever we get a disbursement or a report or summary, they're very adamant about letting us know that what we're telling you are hypotheticals and projected based on things not changing today, and they've been changing and filing left and right.
Yeah, there's been bankruptcies by several large, or a couple of large pharmacies.
Yes.
Mr. Harrison.
As a person who argued here the other day for not cutting the courtroom, I've thought about it a lot, and it was a close vote, 4-3. The committee voted. I did not get the vote, but I argued to keep it in there. I think Mr. Harrison is on, quite frankly, on and I'm like you, I hate to say this, I like to have the money in the pocket, and I see what you're saying, but a lot of things can happen between now and next year as far as revenue and other things, and we're not talking about a significant amount of money that we couldn't recover from the decision that we make, but I think Mr. Harrison is on target. It would solve our problem this year. It would give us a year to continue to work on this courtroom. I know that Mr. Klein is kind of a miracle worker at finding ways of solving what were really expensive situations. We'd have a year to work on it, so I really am supportive of what Mr. Harrison, Commissioner Harrison is saying.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, just as a point, just keep in mind that the motion is just to claw back the money. It's not to claw, because we wouldn't, I didn't get a second on the first part.
That's fair.
So the argument is written moved. So it's just clawing and putting it back in.
Ms. Boyd and then Mr. Klein, and we'll take a vote.
I have one more element to add to this. So the new judge that we're talking about, she's helping them over in Chancery and Criminal Court. I've been keeping an eye over in General Sessions, and I have to tell you, we got 2 General Sessions judges. I won't tell you, maybe I talked to both of them, maybe one. We're very close on their docket to getting another General Sessions judge. Now, I don't know if y'all know that.
No.
Well, she is a hybrid. This new judge is a hybrid.
Is she going to cross over to General Sessions also? She cannot go to Sessions. So I just want you to know that I think that as the sheriff says crime goes up, we're looking at yet another courtroom. So if we want to push this off, we got another one in the door coming in.
So you have to agree to the new judge.
But
You may not agree to that.
here's the thing.
I don't know, I just wanted to add that to the,
And
a little long-term plan.
I was here at the last discussion.
I appreciate the comment, and I'm gonna try to bring us a little bit back into order here. I appreciate that, and I agree with you. And I just want to say, we have a courtroom. So because the motion is just on the mistake, we have an empty courtroom, we have an empty floor, we have a need for expanding services. We know that inputs for construction are only going up. Because this is totally decoupled, and we have a very good understanding that this is totally decoupled from recurring. The question is about, if we know this is a need to do now, we know things are gonna be more expensive now, we know that putting clawing this money back is not going to help recurring. So if we know something's gonna be more expensive, we know we have the need for it, we know for Ms. Boyd's point that we're gonna potentially have more after that, I see no need to kill this courtroom. I'm gonna be against that motion, but Mr. Long.
One thing I want to talk about is make sure we're all looking at the capital projects correctly. Okay. The capital projects fund has a couple of portions. The first one, we've got some bond money left from the resource support. We segregate that, and then you also have grants. We segregated that. So all all we're talking about is the local amounts from property taxes. They're reoccurring like any other penny. The whole history of this, the county had a capital projects fund when I got here in 2009, okay? It was based up of one-time transfers. In 2011, it was decided that, the county had a lot of needs and no money, so at that time, the interest rates had moved around, and we refinanced the bond, had some savings, and this, savings on the actual payments, plus it shortened up the bonds, and the county took the funds and moved those pennies over into this capital projects fund. So this is how it was created. The thought process at the time, and the discussion was, you have all these operating funds. It's very easy for somebody to get in a tight spot. They come and eliminate all their cars or ambulances. It makes their budget look good, but you can't see their capital. So that's the only purpose. The rule on capital projects, once you levy it in there, is for capital projects purposes. And what the purpose is determined by GAAP, the Government Accounting Standards Board, because it requires a state law. And I think you were on the email because it was a good question from Dylan. We've had a policy for years of two things, because one, you don't want to violate your tax levy, so you have to use it for capital project purposes. Right. What it basically says, and it was a Q&A under the codification, which is the GAAP, of course. What it says is you do not have to capitalize every item that goes into your capital projects fund. It just has to be capital-wide. So in other words, we've always tried to follow with capitalized miles over 7,500. So if you put a $3,000 item in there and it was capital in nature, we can't do that, but it can't be operating. But the whole thing of talking about one time versus two, to be clear, all the money in your capital projects money is reoccurring funds for the whole. But the thing is, you've got reoccurring capital coming, so you've got to decide, do you want to put it over in capital operating? But the only reason for the segregation was to guarantee that the money wasn't mixed into operations. The same reason Toby's got the vehicle over here. They raised what was at the time a penny, and they wanted to guarantee there'd be equipment money from now on versus it going into operational at some point, because if you levered it into the highway fund, it could any time be used for salaries.
So
we have a vote
on the floor. We have a motion on the floor. Any other comments before we take about this one?
Who determines what goes in capital for one time, and who determines what's recurring?
It's basically capital-like or recurring. Salaries are reoccurring items. You buy a car, it's one time. You buy a piece of equipment, it's one time. The rule we followed at the county for many years to make sure is a very strict rule. One, when you levy the pennies over into capital projects, you have to use them by that purpose. A citizen can bring suit for levying for one person tax or anybody can. So you've got to use it for capital. Well, the county's required to follow GAAP. GAAP is determined by GAAP, the Government Accounting Standards Board. What they say, we follow that rule. Our rule is more strict. So what it says is, it said on one of the Q&As, which is under the codification, which is GAAP, or strength, it said that it has to be capital-like items, or capital in nature. In other words, you're buying a $3,000 piece of equipment because we don't capitalize it. You can still pay it through there, but it needs to be capital in nature. It needs to be equipment. It don't need to be salaries, insurance, gasoline, electricity, something that, like, if I buy this table this year, I don't have to lay off an employee or shut down a building to buy a table next year. That's what they're
right, but we have a pot of money that's recurring every year.
That's because you levy through pennies of property taxes we're talking about. If you move it out, it won't be. So you got to determine how much you're going to leave here, because you've got two things. You've got a lot of capital money, okay, think about it. But you've got about $16 million of that 30 that's got to go directly back over to debt service, because you've got an 11-year structure. What's left over, when we move it back, is going to have to fund, one, your capital. Number two, any debts you may want to issue, may or may not. Everybody's pretty much against debt right now. Or, plus that home, or number three, you can move any of that excess that you don't need for those two over to operational. What Mr. Sho's trying to say is, anything we move to operational is going to shrink capital, debt capacity, or future capital, because these are recurring pennies and they only grow at certain rates. That's what we're saying. There's three things in play here, in two pots. So once you move the pot into the general fund, it can be used for any allowed general fund operation. By leaving it over in capital, you are restricting it for capital life. By leaving it over debt service, you're restricting it for debt. Or if you move it over to your road superintendent, it's for highway. The only reason we can't pay highways in general is because we have a levy specific for highway. So we can't pay capital for him. Okay. But does that make a little more sense, or do I need to?
Is there a percentage of the $1.48 that is automatically allocated to capital?
You mean the $1.42?
Or $1.42, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right, well, what I was showing you earlier, historically we put about $5 million in there, but you've grown. So there's not a match based on the tax levy you do each year.
So roughly 4.5 pennies.
Yeah, what you've been doing historically. But each year, we've had excess debt, we've moved money over. Last time we needed excess, we moved a significant amount of pennies 1 year for debt service. That's how you do the countywide communication radio system. I think it was about $5 or $6 million. So the county here, which is a really good thing, you try to build up excess in your capital to pay future capital versus borrowing. If we click over here to capital, it's very important. Two things. Two things in part. I'll get my pointer. It's easy for people to see if my finger's not in the right. We got two things in play. This right here, you know, Mr. Ellis, you gave me 19.5. We're estimating these requesting memories of these 4 million. These are another 5 here, correct? Yep. We understand that two things. This is to fix the backlog, but he's also facing inflation, so there's a concern what happens after that. Well, you've got this amount right here. The less you have to spend or move that amount, it's going to be bigger. If you can hold on to it, then when Mr. Ellis runs out of money here, you still have the option to give him more money, or say you do come through and there's a large construction project that's $10 million versus borrowing money, you could use that money. So like you were talking about the projects, any one of those that you do or fund takes money out of that. Anything that you transfer takes money out of that. And then the other thing is if you did say, hey, I need to do a school, which we think is several years out, I think the last one took about $7 million a year, and the rates were much lower, and schools are getting bigger. So $7 million a year, you know, you have to stop them quite a bit off here again if you wanted that kind of capacity. But at the same time, they're growing in property tax, and we've got those on our long-term plans, and that's why you're asking for schools. But that's just to kind of give you the mile-high view of how the things move around.
Just one more comment I would make too is, keep in mind, yeah, we're talking about schools, we're talking about a program. I'm gonna tell you somebody else that needs another building at some point. Toby Ellis, if you've ever been over there.
His main office.
That whole area has been there for a long time. So when we're talking about
Now,
capital projects.
if you wanted to make a motion to appropriate that $2 million for facilities for Mr. Ellis, I think that's more fair.
Let me play
Well, I mean, my motion just put it in the capital. We can always.
Here's two things
You would like to make an amendment, I'll be willing to second it.
This is two things you really got. You got this money here, and the more you can put in there, you can build these things like Toby's or whatever you need to go to the general fund. And this is another we need to make sure we go to that. Go to the graph and stat. Also remember, the more you have up here, you've got for two things. If you have an issue like revenue shortfalls, or if you want to do a one-time expenditure. You could right now safely do a one-time expenditure from here, but I wouldn't do anything recurring, just shrink it like salaries, because you want a long-term.
All about the trajectory, man.
And you see your long-term planning sheet, and we can close this up
line, and then we're going to try to.
I would, Judge Gay came in Monday night and he sat here for 3 hours and made an appeal, because he said they're leapfrogging and it's kind of a mess. And I think the one at this table who would know more about that than anybody is the mayor. I would wonder if he would be willing to chime in on his opinion.
Do you have a comment, Mr. Mayor, on this program?
They do have to juggle the courtrooms. It is an inconvenience to them. My bigger concern is making sure that public safety is priority, because I think that's our role. Our role is to make sure that citizens are safe. And, you talk about the courtroom, it's not that the citizens are more ignorant than we are and don't understand. It's all about perception. And the perception is that we're cutting public safety, and you walk into these beautiful courtrooms, and we said from the beginning that that courthouse was too big, but here we are, and we're finding out that maybe it's not too big, but we do have to figure out what our priorities are, and I think right now our priorities are.
Yeah, but I'm not saying never build it out. I'm just saying.
I think, and to be quite honest with you, I think we're $1 million. We've got $1 million.
We do.
We have it.
We do.
And so why do we have to cut public safety, just so we can say that we cut the budget.
Well, Mr. Mayor, so we can have that one, I think that's, we're all
And
heard the last.
we'll talk about that more.
Any other comments on this one? Okay, all in favor of Mr. Harrison's motion to, strike the $2 million from the capital, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Three all opposed? No. Oh,
I'm abstaining.
okay,
I'm not
so,
sure.
motion carries, so $2 million.
How did that go down again? What three voted for it?
Miss Bullock, Miss, Bergdorf, and, Mr. Harrison all voted to strike the.
Roy, let's start him later.
Yeah, we'll take a break right after
We'll see
this.
movement on,
So we're gonna cancel this, we'll cease it now, well, this has to.
we'll see some movement on it. It's not gonna be funded. We need to hold movement on these
All right,
projects.
so we'll see, so we'll do that.
The mayor's uncomfortable too.
I know we voted, but how much have we invested in this? You say you got call upstairs to Scott right now.
Hey, we can vote. We
I
can
know.
You
vote.
already have the,
We can, you know.
I can tell you where we're
I'm on the
at.
winning side, I can read this.
I can tell you
Okay.
exactly where you're at.
I've been reading my Robert story.
Okay.
I can tell you where you're at if you want me to answer. When you had the design, that was back when you did the original courtroom. We have been in negotiations with the architect, trying to get it through GenOps and then back to the mayor. Right now, the mayor said he's had it signed. We were trying to move that direction based on the movement from the budget and GenOps last week, which is good the mayor was uncomfortable, because what we're saying right now is nothing. You settled the original design that we're holding. The design was from the original architect. They didn't want to move forward with us, so we got another architect who wanted to take those designs and decrease the fees. We'll just stop the project until this is settled, and then if it's settled as it is today, then we'll stop, but if it gets re-brought up, we'll re-engage them.
And just as a point of clarification, it can always be added on the floor if you get 13.
That's why I say we're stopping for now.
So we're kind of out of order.
Exactly.
Is there a motion to reconsider, is there anything? Okay, so we've
No, we'll
done.
do that later.
All right, well, right now we're gonna stop work.
I'll answer the question.
So we're gonna stop work, and, please take that, and we'll do a 5-minute break.
That's the key.
I was doing it.
Hey, okay, so we're about to get moving on. I do believe that Mr. Harrison had, he intimated to me that he wanted to make a motion, before we move any further. So, Mr. Harrison, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would propose, and I will move an additional penny from capital. So we go from 3 pennies to 4 pennies.
To the general fund?
To the general fund.
Okay, so we have a motion to go from 3 pennies to 4 pennies, from capital to the general fund. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Motion and a second. Okay, any discussion on it? I'm gonna make one comment and then I'll take a vote. I'm of the opinion, I just wanna be clear here. We've talked about this at the beginning. We've got, a little more than 14 pennies. Take out 3, we got about, it could be close to 12. So, given a little bit of additional growth in sales tax, I think I've said I'm very comfortable with that, for a 5-year plan, that we are not in deficit spending. You add, some additional kind of bridges we can pull, we're looking at 6, maybe 7. That's because I'm just doing simple math. 12 divided by 4 is, 12 divided by 3 is 4, add 1, that's 5. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So I just want to be clear that we are shortening our window if we were to do this year over year, which is fine. I just want to be very honest about what we're doing here. So that's the motion. Any other discussion on that?
Is that modern math?
That's narrow high math. That's what they're teaching at your school there, sir.
I will just make one comment.
Go ahead.
She might have been in queue first.
I just want to say, I'm going to abstain because I think waiting till the 15th until we get those, sales tax numbers in that are showing a trend down from last month would make me more comfortable in looking at this, and it's 10 days.
And my comment is
And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and similar to what I had said during the break, is I'm betting on Sumner County.
Okay.
I'm betting on us, and I just think that that's kind of where we are, and, so yeah, I'm comfortable with that motion.
All right, well, I'm gonna be against it here, but if it passes and we move and we build the budget off of it, I will support this budget because I'll support the will of the committee. But at this point, I'm gonna vote against it. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No.
And one abstention. Okay, motion carries. So, Mr. Loring, I think with that, we can make the changes. I think that none of the requested, additional cuts will need to happen.
No, but I think there's two,
So I just want to be clear here for everybody who's waiting, just because I think we got a lot of folks. We can publish a budget now with that penny, we'll be able to do so. None of the additional requests for additional cuts are gonna be necessary with that penny over. There will be, I think, if folks would like to stay, I think there will now be some potential margin, to recapture, some of the previous cuts potentially. But if you were here, worried about, additional cuts to department, then you can, that will not be necessary now.
I think there's a few questions, there's like radios with EMA, he may want to pay for that.
Okay.
About your radio fees, Ken, we want to get those on the budget.
Yes, sir. I really play that. We'll get to it. Just any other notes for folks?
Radio, that's the library wanted to make a request to put somebody else.
The election commission, but they're not here.
Election commission, we have the benchmarking, if you want to,
So
they come in.
let's do this, now that we've got that out of the way, actually, the library is here, let's go ahead and do the library.
I think there was only one or two that made requests, and you got one of your board members here too, and I'll pull out the emails I received.
I'm gonna, let's let you go over, and then I'm gonna make a motion to, suspend the rules to allow the libraries to speak.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Just want to let them.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Maybe more advantageous to let them speak, since I've got their emails, they can actually probably explain their needs better than me just reading the email. I have one from their old libraries, she's want to know on the document.
Wherever they start, whichever one.
Which one are you talking about?
Any of them, Bell or not. I just want to flip to the page, I'm sorry.
Toward the back of the general.
Are you talking about the Capitol?
No, she's talking about operations.
You're
I was going to look
operations.
at the
I'm
numbers.
asking what you're talking about.
We do want.
Okay, do them on the screen.
We
I
usually
got
do
it,
on screen, but I can do them here too if you want. If they start on page 73.
Thank you.
You want to look at the hard doc?
I
I've got I got an email from Millersville, Portland, Gallatin, and Westmoreland, so I don't know if they're all here or not. I believe Millersville was requesting to add a little bit of money back into the part-time as one of their discussions, so I don't know if she's here or not. I don't know if Millersville is Millersville here.
She's not.
Okay.
Give me
You're familiar with these.
We're gonna let Kristen Lemus speak. She's the interim director at Hendersonville Library. There were questions last week from Commissioner Lambert and Commissioner Boyd about the difference in her data processing price, and they wanted some discussion about, or information about the difference between the TLC and the Atrium, because the other libraries use Atrium.
So I actually have a handout where I made kind of like a comparison against TLC, Atrium, and then a third party that I found. If you guys would like to take a look at it, I'd be more than happy to pass that out to everybody. But, yeah. And I appreciate you guys asking these questions, because I'm very engaged in this role, as I'm sure everybody's aware, so
I
it's
can
an
actually come
opportunity to kind of look through and ask the same questions myself, versus just, well, this is what it's always been done, kind of thing, so let me reevaluate some stuff. Which, what I actually found is while TLCs are current, they are the most expensive options that I was able to find out there, and there are some drawbacks that staff are not 100% happy with. Everything I'm going to talk to is from a staff perspective in a day-to-day, like, operations type thing. We have issues where it'll bug out, we lose files, patron notifications don't always go through, so somebody has an overdue book, or a whole keep ready, they're not always notified of that, and we have to constantly be going through and checking it. That's the current one that we're on right now,
And that's
the TLC.
Oh, TLC, okay.
Yes. The benefits I saw to keeping that one is we are coming up on our busiest time of the year with summer reading, and staff is already fully trained on this one. However, there is not a whole lot more I could find outside of that. So I looked into Atrium, more, I was able to talk to Andy over there. He is a sales representative that's been working with all the other libraries in our county. They are considerably cheaper. On the very last page, there's a price comparison. Atrium is that middle one that is in the orange. So they're going to charge us to switch completely over just over 10 grand, whereas TLC is charging us to keep where we're at 20 grand. That would be cutting that in half. They have a lot more options that we could do, and
Who's that?
Atrium.
Atrium.
The only downside we really found were that we're gonna have a really quick turnaround. They usually don't recommend switching systems this quickly. They would like a 90-day to 6-month process. If we're wanting to do it before the next TLC bill is due on July 1st, we would kind of have to look into that. They said it's possible, but it will be a little bit hectic and stressful. We could also talk to TLC about extending that contract to see if they'd let us switch in January or not do a full year and kind of what that would look like. I had reached out to them but had not gotten any information on that back as of this morning. And then we would have to find something else to work with our website. Right now, our website is through UCMore, which is a TLC, trying to think, software. But they've also told us that that software is going to be going away within the next year. So either way, we're going to be having to find a new website. The third option,
Can I ask you on that?
Yeah, of course.
Would you need a new website with the other providers? Everybody's gonna have to have.
Yeah, everybody's gonna have to find a new
Thank you for
website.
clarification.
Yeah, of course. The third option, I'm gonna briefly touch on it. We chose to look into it because it was made by public librarians for public libraries, but you would be the first library in Tennessee to use this option. It's very new. I don't know how it would interact with some of the systems that the state has, and it's honestly not that much more cost effective than TLC is. So I put it on there just because I did the work. I wanted to kind of show it to you guys, but I wouldn't recommend it moving forward. What I would like to look into and find out what the next steps would be switching from TLC, which is our current software system, to Atrium. I feel like it would be a better use of our funds.
So you do think moving to
Yes.
Atrium would be?
I'm not sure why that decision was not made in the previous administration.
How much does that save in the total operating budget year over year?
So this year, our TLC is charging us just over 20 grand. I don't have the exact numbers with me. And then Atrium is wanting to charge to switch over, so this includes all switchover fees, a 2-day in-training process, everything like that, would be just over 10 grand.
And then how much year over year?
And then year over year, they were gonna drop that down to just over 5.
So 5,000 recurring, talking about recurring here,
Yeah.
5,000
Recurring versus
versus
20,000 recurring.
So $15,000 net, you could, with the same amount, you could put that toward, what, half of an FTE?
Yeah.
Could you use that half the FTE to open the libraries for an additional?
8 hours on
8
Friday.
hours on Friday?
I would have to look into that. I don't feel comfortable saying yes or no because I've not seen it all broken down line by line. But that would definitely be something I could look into and might be a possibility, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Did you say the current one ended July 1st?
It will, so we'll have to repay it on July 1st.
So we're gonna end up paying the 20 plus, so you're gonna pay
Yeah.
more this year to get.
And I do want to add that, the city of Hendersonville says that they still have the $20,000 extra above the 50 that they currently give if we open that extra 8 hours on
So this would
Friday.
be, to me,
So it'd be an extra $35,000 a year
we-
for your operating expense.
so, yeah, so that would be a
Recurring.
good looking thing to look at here, like, you know, if you can assume an extra 30, an extra 15 in savings there, maybe, the county can find another 5, because you guys asked for more members, we didn't do that, so, an extra $35,000 to $40,000, and to see if you could, be open for an additional 8 hours.
I would definitely be able to look into that.
Okay, awesome, we'd love to see that.
There's a couple questions.
I'll get you, and then you go ahead.
Number one, it ends July 1st, correct? So you've got a 10,000 conversion, are they gonna, does the 10,000 conversion cover you through the rest of the year? Or are they gonna charge you the 10 and the 5?
So it would cover us for the rest of the year.
Okay, so what I'm saying is you've got the 20, she's gonna have to pay it July 1. But you're gonna have to pay, it's gonna cost you 10 more this year, but save you 15 next year.
I understand that, but like again, I'm thinking about recurring.
Right.
We could absolutely take care of that in capital, this is a small amount.
Capital conversion.
You can't take care of
Capital conversion.
conversion.
There's capital in nature.
It's a building that's partly owned by us. It's software.
The software every year is the
Yeah, it's all conversion.
It doesn't feel like it's happening.
That's probably
Yeah,
how.
well, if it's a small amount, we can figure that out though. All right, y'all are both giving me the no then.
What the actual official people says is capital like items, so I don't know.
All right, Mr. Harris.
Could this be covered with the bequest that was made with that will?
Yeah,
Your conversion,
now that
we
we
could
could
take
easily
it
do,
out.
that we could easily do.
Oh, yeah, we can make that happen.
Okay, so look, here's, I'll make a motion here. That, and it's a contingent motion, that, contingent upon, there's two parts. One, that we go ahead and move you over to Atrium, and that we keep your funding the same. In that contingent upon your ability to, open an extra day, and contingent on the city of Hendersonville meeting that, that we would appropriate an additional $5,000 on top of, recurring for you, year over year, and, how much from the $20,000 from the will, $20,000 from the gift to cover the change.
The change, so, yes,
So
$20,000.
that's my motion, there's a lot in that, I can say it again.
Yes.
So it's contingent on.
The changeovers, Ken.
Yeah, so that would come from the gifts.
Yes.
Okay, so that's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second?
And I have an amendment.
Okay.
I want to define what a day is, and I want a day to be 8 hours.
You don't have to make the amendment, is the original, the motion maker good with that, is the second good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Go ahead.
I'd like to point out a couple of things. One, if we're gonna be double dipping here with two different softwares, we need to be very cognizant of what the termination requirements are of this contract, because we don't want to be doing this any longer than we have to. The second item is, Gen Ops just kicked off, starting all over again, the maintenance, getting some sort of maintenance agreement for that facility. So I don't know how this extra time, extra hours is gonna play into what's trying to be accomplished with getting them to become a part of some sort of new, agreement for the maintenance of that facility. So just FYI.
My motion will assume that there's not a material impact from those things. If there is a material impact, then we can come back with that. Is the second good with that? Still good with it, given the comments?
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, if we can find out that, I'll call Mayor Clary, see if they're still amenable to their part there, and if you can come back and say that you're open and these contingencies are met, and we will meet our deal.
One more question.
Go ahead.
That is library directed, and you have the larger selection. Yes. So one of the items that I was looking at and wondering about is an automatic checkout machine. And some counties that have it, they cut down their staffing needs. And some research has been done, and they range from 5,000 to 30,000, but I understand you don't have magnetic strips in your books anyway.
No, we do not.
So it wouldn't be like we need the 2,000 to 30,000. Would a automatic checkout machine help us going forward with recurring salary costs?
That would be something I'd have to look into a little
Could you
bit
do that?
more. Yeah, to get it.
And let us know, because I'd like to invest in technology.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree on that.
Do we have a date, Chairman, do we have a date when we might want her
We
a
need-
goal date for her to come back?
We don't, but we're waiting to see when we're all gonna be back.
Oh, okay,
So
so
it will
not,
be, we don't have it yet, but there will be a time.
so start working on it.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
So we've taken care of libraries,
We have,
do we have another one?
do we have to deal with the cap? I don't know what,
There was a couple emails sent to me, and that's what I was asking. Millersville came in and they said that the reduction in their, part-time, if there's any way that they could have 2,628 of it back. That's just a request, it could be on their second hearing.
because when you made me choose between the clerk and the catalog and acquisitions librarian,
We're on small amounts here,
Okay.
and I'm fine with that, like, I don't think we need to vote on it, let's just add that back.
But the other thing is, if there's any requests like that, you may want to let it be their hearing, you know, to get a hearing.
I don't
Make it
understand.
clear.
Okay.
Basically, when they put a full-time employee on Millersville the other day, what the Millersville, director is saying is that the existing, part-time fulfill a very important role, and if there's not at least $2,628, they won't be able to cover it even with the full-time.
So that's what you're asking for.
Can I ask, and I don't know if you have this right away, the standards, I think Millersville's a level 2 or 3. How many full-time employees are they supposed to have?
I don't recall, I don't
There
know
is
that, I don't
number though,
have that
right?
on me.
I don't think they have their number either.
Do we, I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about $2,600, or
$2,600, all we're talking about?
$2,600.
I thought we were talking about a full.
Without, if I don't know,
Okay.
we need a motion, can you just add that back in?
You've already handled that.
Okay, so let's keep moving here.
The other one was Mr. Ellis that's outside the general
Is it more
fund.
library?
Or do you want to finish the
She's
general
not
fund?
finished with library.
Sorry.
We just need to make sure that,
I think several saying they were having difficulties making the cut, the one asking for additional
But
from.
we're not cutting anymore.
You know,
no,
that's what
we're
I
not
think.
cutting anymore.
Okay, is there
We just
additional?
need to make sure that Gallatin's capital was added, because none of her capital was added. And she has $50,000 in capital. She had paint for $8,000, the building facade, which is $25,000, which I don't think, can we just, would you like to speak to that, Ms. Cato? She's the director of the Gallatin Library. And she had that $20,000 asked for HVAC, would that fall under your, your initiative, your roof and air conditioning initiative that we passed?
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have to do, okay, so,
We're good.
well, would you address the building facade? Well, she's the director, I'm not day-to-day, she is, that's her job.
Several years ago, we had gotten a lot of complaints about the front of the building, and it's a really soft sandstone, and it's easy to really mess up with a pressure washer. And so we put out a bid and, to get it cleaned and sealed, because when the building was built, it wasn't sealed, and they have sealed now. Somebody came in and offered to do it for free, hoping to get more business from the county, and I was forced to use them. And, they didn't do a great job, and it needs to be reclaimed the proper way. There may be some,
How much are we talking?
the last time we did it, we talked to somebody, it was, I'm so sorry.
I have it at $20,000.
Yes.
And the thing is, when we spoke about this in the library board budget meeting, I suggested that we get in touch
Here's
with
the thing,
someone.
without objection, because we just removed $2 million from the courthouse, I think we have $20,000 to take care of that, so. We don't.
I think she has a few dollars more than 20.
Just 50 total.
Yeah, I don't know that we need a motion on it, is my point, I was just like, without objection.
I was just saying, we couldn't do a motion since we're
Yeah.
anyway.
How much does she need in total though? That's just the cleaning, she needed some other pieces.
Yes, I had, painting for $8,000 to do the downstairs meeting.
What's your total amount?
I don't know.
Total amount, everything.
Market value, it looks like $28,000, $28 plus 1,500, so,
$30,000, it's
With
anybody.
30 makes you,
So what's,
I can, well, we also have like fixtures that the maintenance department has recommended that we update, because we have a lot of, deceased animals that are in them. And, I'm sorry, we can't reach
and are
without
the glass
cutting.
and bats and stuff.
I'm trying to move this along, it's okay.
I have $50,000.
So let's do,
50,000?
that's a good chunk, let's do. It's in capital, we get to 35, we want to take a vote, come back in, or what do we want? I'll move us back in.
I'd like to speak.
Wait, let's just move us back into our, rules here, thank you, ma'am, go ahead.
So, with the request
We need
that,
a motion out there to discuss it,
Is there, do we need,
or you can make a move to discuss.
I'll move for $35,000, of capital toward the, motion and second, Ms. Boyd, go ahead.
so, I believe that most, if not all, of her items are maintenance related, because we want to maintain the outside of the building. And then I would like to see, she's got furniture up on the top that is deteriorating without proper maintenance. It's nice teak wood, somebody spent top dollar for it. Her items to fix are maintenance items to maintain our assets, and that's why I'm for the full amount.
So 50,000.
Well, do you want to make an amendment to?
Other than the
Do you
paint,
wanna-
it's like
Do you want to
maintaining
make
the
an amendment
building.
to 50,000?
Yes, I would like to make the amendment, because it's, to me, it's maintenance to maintain our
So your
funds.
amendment is to move to increase the
Total
thirty,
is $53,000.
to increase the 35,000 to 53,000?
Yes.
That's your amendment, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, one abstention, and we're back on the main, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One abstention, okay. So motion carries, we'll move that $53,000 capital as they requested. Okay, Mr. Loring, are we done now with libraries?
Westmoreland just.
Okay,
The thing, are we doing adjustments now? Because the original request was we're down in adjustments, or are you way on the secondary for this? So that's my question.
how much, what are we talking about, like?
I don't know.
I guess there's a question here. Were these adjustments were the emails coming in a question about the reduction, the additional, we're not doing any of those additional reductions now because because we moved the penny over, we don't have to ask for that.
This also would be her computers.
I thought.
Do we take?
We talked about those on look under, that was discussed, but I don't know if it was.
We just want to make sure.
Is it under, I got the page here, what's more?
The $3,311? That's the tech grant, we had a question about. That's right, we had a question about the tech grant. What's the tech grant?
What's the question? What was the
She has to have. We have taken care of your computers.
I have a motion to take.
They should be yellow if we've added something.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's a $30,020 and it's marked in yellow, we added $23.22. Well, back on, I believe, was the second,
So what was your total request for computers?
Little over 2,300.
2320 or a little over?
2320, that was the email I had.
Well, it's 30, so you got 3,020?
But it was 2320 is the additional to that.
Oh, okay.
Did you ask for some green names? That was the year before.
I'll ask one.
There's windows.
Okay.
So,
It was the conversion.
Mayor, are you picking up her windows out of your budget?
Oh, the windows, that was the 15.
That's what they're discussing right now, the windows.
Yeah, we've
I think the mayor's
taken
got
care of your windows.
The mayor's got your windows. Yeah,
so
that's what
is
she's
this,
asking.
so is this
You
good?
got computers, so you were talking about windows.
Well, they still talk about windows, and I knew the mayor
Not like this off the list.
It always lower here, 2,400?
She was just trying to budget for next year.
It was an email I received, that we read.
97.
When you were here, we read the email, it was 2320.
Let's go to 2,500.
Why don't we just have her email, because she gets to stay in here anyway.
We're talking about $800 here, just email what you need, as long as it's not over $2,500.
Okay.
All right.
We need to, is Galvin still here?
Yeah.
All right,
We have a question about your tech grant. We have a tech grant that you requested for $3,311. We need to add the revenue or remove the grant. Has the grant actually been approved
Yes.
for next year?
We've already spent it, it's for 2025.
The 26, you made a request for a tech grant, 26. $3,500 and, I'm sorry, $3,311.
Yeah, we've spent that, and we haven't asked for that yet, for the tech grant. So it's good next year.
Yeah, that's why we had a question about it.
No, that does not need to be in there.
Okay, let's mark it yellow, and then when she gets her verification, she can.
any others from the libraries?
That would be all I'm aware of unless Ms. Bergendorf's aware of
That's
something.
all, we've taken care of all of them, thank you all.
No, I asked about standards for how many full-time libraries they're supposed to have for their size, and they're supposed to have 2 full-time clerks and 2 part-time.
Millisville.
They've got more than that.
I mean, they have.
Well, that's the standard, but she
Okay.
hires
Thank you.
good, yeah. She hires
Thank
full
you,
time.
ladies.
Okay.
Okay,
I think she's.
moving
Yeah.
on here.
Do you want to go to Mr. Tovey's, or do we want to finish,
Let's do, I'm gonna finish general fund, because what I'd like to do, since we've moved this is, and I think this is gonna be, I mean, look, we're gonna do this.
Do it right.
I would like to, whether we need a motion or not, I'll bring us back to the rules. I don't know if we need a motion, but I would like without objection. We're having to do this with the assumption to, direct Mr. Lyon to see if he can build back in, the step raises that the
after the sales tax comes in.
That's fine, you know what, we can look at it, that's fair, we'll look
When
at
did
that.
when did that proposal come in on this back?
Well, if we're gonna move the penny over,
You're kind of going back.
We're going back.
I thought the penny was not to cut anything else.
well,
Yeah, I thought so too.
let's do this, let's wait until the next.
Every time we make money.
Well, hey, you know,
Yeah, I'm not cutting anything else.
you guys open the floodgates, let's do it. So, all right, but I like Mr. Boyd's idea here, let's get to a balanced budget, and,
And then I'm not stepping forward and saying spend more.
well,
But
okay, we'll just wait and see what our next estimates look like. All right.
Do you want to, one item that came up at your last meeting, there was a question about the county commissions, what's in dues and memberships. It's probably the most advantageous thing to do is start on Department 1 and move down, that way we can knock this out. For any questions? And I've got a handout to go to each one of you that shows what was paid, because there was a question about a particular, there was a question about what's paid out of the county commission, dues and memberships.
All right.
Well, there was a question, it's the county commission, I think there was a question from the commissioners at the table about,
is that your right? You want that one back?
hey, did you mind it? There's two things on this sheet, if you look at it. The first one is actually the payments from the 2025 fiscal year, the one we're in, and the page right behind it is actually the 2024 fiscal year. And I think the question predominantly came up, and I actually had the invoice attached telling what they are doing. I believe the big question that was posed at the last meeting was about GNRC. And I've actually attached their invoice of what they billed us for.
Any questions about
I
that?
was the one that brought this up the weekend from, having been born and raised in Nashville, I don't want to be a part of greater anything having to do with Nashville, maybe greater Sumner County. But, what do they do for us? Are they just trying to pull us into making us a convenient little, hotspot for Nashville, or what do they do for us? I had once before asked that this be removed several years ago.
I thought
Is Greater Nashville, is that a government agency or a
wait, we've got a question here, and we haven't answered it. I thought we did.
Actually, there was never a vote taken.
There was never a vote taken to,
There was a discussion, that's why I'm bringing it up.
what, I guess, we still have the question of, what are we getting out of these?
There's your invoice.
And if Mr. Lambert was here, he'd say, do they have a reserve like the transportation
Yeah,
people?
right, we've built
I'm gonna say that for him.
There's down on page 2 what they're.
I'll be happy to bring a little clarity to it,
Okay.
and then y'all make the decision. But the Greater Nashville Regional Council is just a name. There are regional councils throughout the state. They're established by law. And what's housed within that is, one, they offer services to counties and cities for planning purposes. They offer senior programs, which we would lose that benefit. But the most important thing is the Regional Transportation Board, which is the flow of all federal dollars for all road projects that happen. And so we have the potential of losing our ability to be able to be added to the transportation infrastructure plans and future road projects.
So if, Mr. Mayor, so if we were to exit from this, we would lose
our voice at the table.
But we would lose the ability to, isn't our voice at the table our state reps?
Not on this, no.
Why?
They do have a voice, but they don't sit in on these meetings at the transportation plan.
So I'm just trying to understand the flow of this. So like, our state representatives have they allocate funding, sometimes they allocate federal funding, which flows through them, or we can apply the federal funds directly to time. And we use these to
to, for various road projects, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the flow of dollars. Where in that flow of dollars does the GNRC have a vote?
They're the governing body.
Of federal dollars?
That the federal dollars flow through the NPO, which is under the authority of GNRC. And they have those entities there's different development districts all over the state of Tennessee. They're all divided up. This one, for whatever reason, is named Greater Nashville. It could have been called Central Middle Tennessee Development District.
I'm going to text
So,
William Lambert right now, who's on our I don't expect him to get to me immediately, but who is, heavily involved in our city finances and asking, and I just want to make sure that this question is right.
yeah.
If we were to withdraw from the GNRC, will there be a material impact to our ability to apply for federal, to receive
I said
federal?
potentially there could be.
Okay, I'm going to text that, but go ahead, Ms. Boyd.
Back to my earlier question, is this a government agency, a quasi, is this an NGO? What is
It's
it?
quasi-government, yeah.
So is it a
developed.
nonprofit, is it
So,
an NGO?
I don't know the exact structure.
Because their annual budget's $26 million. So I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
well, I guess they have.
Could we-
Well, go ahead, let Ms. Boyd, and then.
I think it's probably best if you have GNRC come in.
That's what Mr. Laura was.
That's what I'm saying, because the mayor handles many, many things, so it's hard for him to know every detail, just like me. So that might be more advantageous to invite the GNRC representative down to discuss how they're formed and all those details if you need those. To be fair, 'cause it's kind of hard to know all those items.
I mean, if we want, I'm happy to do that during our next meeting that we're going to have to schedule anyway. Mr. Harrison, then Mr. Hyde.
I could shed just a little bit of light because the city of Portland utilizes GNRC, but only as a source of information. They are a lot of statistical gathering, and they bring the statistics to, because I've been on the, I guess what you call a quasi board for what's called Preserving Portland, which, is basically just an advisory board to say, okay, what do we want to see over the next 25, 30 years? And all they do is compile and bring in data to us so that those individuals can make decisions and present a plan. They're not advising us or saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. Now, that's just been my experience in Portland. But they've been very helpful, I can say that.
I'll just quickly state, if you go to gnrc.org, they've got a mission statement on there, and you can actually learn quite a bit. I've learned quite a bit just reading it now, but there is more information out there for anybody choosing to check it out.
Mr. Hyde, you had a comment?
The only thing I would say about this is, if there is an organization here, such as GNRC, and no one at this table really knows what they do, I mean, really knows what they do, we're in serious trouble if we're participating and giving money to them. The other thing I'd like to say is that years ago, I don't know exactly what year it was, an organization that we used to fund pretty heavily invited me to lunch one day to talk about some plans that were being initiated, and somehow Greater Nashville was involved in that. This was a rail system that did not benefit Sumner County. It was really a convenience to Nashville to get workers to Nashville and then get them home. And I think that because we didn't really jump at it, I think that's the rail service that ended up in Wilson County that is just about defunct now because of lack of use. But it was going to open the heart of this county up by rail right into Nashville, and this was being talked about at that time. I don't think very many people knew about it. This was discussed at lunch. I'm very suspicious of this group, and personally, as one person, not a member of this committee, I wouldn't have anything to do with it or a reasonable transportation benefits Sumner County. I think it's something that benefits Nashville and using us.
So, I agree with both commissioners down here, but I am wondering if Portland's membership is under ours.
It may very well be. I'm looking
And-
at the
and I don't
membership
wanna-
right now on their website, thanks to, Mr. Sidman. Members, by membership, it's Gallatin, Goodlettsville, Hendersonville, Millersville, Mitchellville, Portland, Westmoreland, and White House. So it's very possible that that's under the county.
So we're covering all their dues.
I think so. I kind of,
Regional council officers,
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, without objection, let's just invite them to, you know.
maybe they can pay
Because the
their.
last time that we invited, you know,
Sure.
somebody, it was the regional transportation, and we learned that we had 12 years of reserves, and we just decided, you know, just because we invite somebody doesn't mean that they get more money. I would be interested in hearing from them, so, without objection, I'm happy to, I'd be interested in seeing what they had to say at our next meeting. Okay, so we'll do that.
And can you ask them to be prepared to tell us what type of industry they are? I'd just be interested.
Yeah,
I
We
wanna
can
know.
tell if they're coming, you can ask.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be, the gentleman the last time said, I just found out last night, and I don't think.
We'll get, they're gonna have plenty of time now.
He did, yeah.
Okay, moving on.
We're down to county commission, a couple items that we had noted, do you want to go down department by department, or do you want to, and then look for things added, or do you want to go for things that we've noted?
Let's just look for what's added per Ms. Boyd. I mean, I think that's the fastest way to do it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, so
Okay,
we
that's
are,
fine, that's
Question
fine.
is, one is there's a, EMS, we had a question from them, and we actually had Jay back here, there is a training supplement this year. And we had a question, do we need to put it in the budget for next year, or is it one time?
It should be, reoccurring this year.
And it's pretty much flow through, so I'm just requesting from the committee, because it won't really have an impact on your numbers today, if you just let us work with EMS and add in that for next year, will prevent unnecessary budget adjustment. It's a flow through, it's a training
I mean,
supplement.
does anybody have? Leave it.
And I think the other question, we had a question on the sheriff's training supplement, I think he's here.
Most is spent.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Training
I
supplement?
don't know that we had a question about the training supplement, if Bethany can go there and kind of pose the question and everything. But it would be the same thing, it would be a flow through for me.
As of right now, the plan that is anticipated to be one next fiscal year now.
That 2009, is that one or two there?
I think the 209,000 is for the two that we did this year.
So do we need to temporarily take it down to one, or do you want to leave it to the
I'll be honest with you, I think it makes it more efficient if you leave it to, it's flow through funding, it's not like we can spend that money on anything
That
other
makes your
than.
variances larger, but it won't make your bottom
That's
line.
fine, let's just leave it.
That's all right, I want you to see all these sheets very.
Yeah, but that's,
Okay.
I mean, that's fine. I don't have, does anybody else have a problem with that?
Where does it flow from?
The state.
State, so it has no.
It flows
It
through
just,
for-
Mr. Lyons, it's because it's too, it makes the sheriff's department spend variance look bigger.
I got it.
That, we just,
That, and then the other thing is when you guys start looking at our financials, you'll have bigger.
so when we.
Revenue expenditure variances and.
We'll look at, you know, these things all stack up, and so you look at the sheriff's department, you look, oh my goodness, spend looks more, well, it's one area, like, that's really, you have that.
Plus it creates variances if we don't get it, so that's another.
Yeah.
Is it more painful to adjust it during the year, because it, or is it okay just to have the variance?
I think we just, I mean, there's gonna be variances and grants that come in.
Yeah, we know that. The next question is, there's the radio system for Mr. Widener, and it's in several departments, and I think the amounts are slightly off. I think the first one's a question that Kim took on, it wasn't for the plug through. Do we have the amounts, we just need to add them?
I thought that, and now I'm confusing myself, I thought it
entity outside the county, or I'm sorry, entity within the county, then they pay their portion, like the sheriff's department, ECC, or whomever, but we have entities outside the county, so we have to receive the funds, and the department has to pay them, and it's only been under Mr. Widener's, but it's not in there right now. If you look, last year, he had 59,662, and I think he said that, I'm sorry, 59,969, but it was 59,662 for the coming year. Unless we're gonna do something different we have in the past, we need to add those in, because it's close to this for like, who all was through, like the city.
53,417 is the outside agencies. And it's in the document we got from there, I thought. That's what we've been working off of in the past couple of days.
We just need to add it in and eliminate it. And to tell you what, it's not actually an expense for Mr. Widener's office, that's the things such as, the city police where they reimburse the fire department, various agencies, but it doesn't go down the back.
Someone could, like, what you,
That's it, right, the yellow.
what you could,
The yellow right there. That's it.
that's
That's what I bill, that's what we pay, and I bill, Hendersonville, Galveston, Portland, White House, and Mays to get checks.
That's just what we had.
So what do we need,
that's
We're not adding it in.
that's not what I added in now, that's what y'all added in last week.
Oh, we took care of it.
We have that.
Okay, I added, that is into
Oh,
software and
Maintenance out.
did y'all split it last week? Did y'all?
It's like a recurring expense.
I don't know if they did it, whether
It fluctuates, yes.
Yeah. I didn't pay
But it's
attention.
not an expense to us,
I don't know.
it's an expense to them, but it's
To the cities?
to the
The
city.
bill comes to us,
So at the
and
end
bills
of the day,
them,
But
they
I'm
pay
not
us
sure what
back.
the commission to adjust it.
We're the central, we're the central
I
agency.
don't know if we need to do anything else here, like, just adjust it, and if there is, if it's sitting in two lines, and we move it down into one, but there's extra sitting in communication that you can reduce, then,
The committee's okay, we'll just Kim the money provided and then send it back to him. There's immaterial differences on those.
that's fine.
The things we were even talking about,
Does anybody have a problem with that?
It's still a wash at the end.
Yeah, that's right.
everybody external is.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Weather? I think we're good here. All right, I'll bring us back into our rules, go ahead.
Right now, the things we have is the things that Ms. Boyd was asking about, and I'm not sure which ones she's referring to, but I do know under other benefits, that I did put $100,000 in there, and that was based on the discussion at, I think, self-insurance and a request, because the small departments, they're generally asked to find the money within the department where the county commission covers it, but that was $100,000 in the budget, if we're gonna cover it by transfer. Versus unassigned funding.
All right, say the last part.
Go click on that, Dave, on those other benefits.
Is that back to when they have an employee that changes from
Yes,
single
ma'am.
to family?
That was the request, because, just like the libraries, we asked them to find if they can, and then the county commission covers it, because what you don't want to happen is departments discriminating against individuals because they got families or spouses. So the county commission always asks them to find it first, if they can't, we've always covered it, and we've done that for several years, and it's sometimes effective. I put that based on the discussion and the request, but it is a new request, and you could keep doing it the same way we've always done it in the past. Some of the departments didn't complain about being done that way, so,
What departments will complain?
some of them, they just hard to find the transfer.
They have been the financial management, one specific one, because, and basically they were over, and they went and found it in their paper, their copy and budget, and that's when I started looking at it and talking to the department heads. And it did seem to be, like, we wouldn't want to restrict their operating, day-to-day operating just because they changed out an employee. They have no control over,
Yeah.
and they obviously can't ask when they go to interview someone what kind of insurance plan they
Let me
have.
give you the details of why it happens, because, just like I talked about the health insurance earlier, we do it based on actuarially determined premiums. So there's a cost that's expected to be for a single, employee plus one, and family at 80%. So, for instance, if somebody's working here and they're single, they get married, it goes up. If they get divorced, it can potentially go down. If they have children, it'll go up. So what happens is, we ask the department, that's been the long-standing, see if you can find the money if you can. If you cannot find it, then we send it on the budget, and the county commission's never refused to do it. Looking at the deltas, you're in pretty good shape on your delta, so this is something could keep following the same procedure, but as what Terry's saying, some of the departments may try a little too hard to find the money, and then they don't have money to operate. I guess that's where you're coming from.
Maybe if we could just send them out a thing that says we're willing to take care of this, just let us know.
Well, yeah,
Instead of asking them.
We already did that.
Yeah,
So, and they could,
and we're putting that amount
so,
in there.
yeah.
to-
$100,000, you
I think it's
can.
good.
Let's just leave, I think we
Yeah.
should leave it,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Leave the 100 in there?
Yeah.
That's one of the new increases that she discussed. I'm not sure what other particular increases.
Well, it's just that we have like throughout, not 400,000 that Matt's looking for, but throughout,
Well,
we have new
We
departments
don't
that are
need that.
asking. Well, just because you don't, we have new departments that are starting to pick up, food supplies that never happened before. I mean, it's not a lot of money, but we're picking up, we're growing in every area, a little bit here and there. And, I mean, I don't know, I'm just saying, I'm just pointing out that we have new line items.
Part of it may be training, or may be coding incorrectly in the past, and we're now fixing it.
And part of it's transfers. Also, if you remember, there was these massive amount of transfers, and we've been telling them to correct their.
Yes, I know
That'll be,
that.
but I can tell you what food supplies generally, or most of it is. A lot of it is the water bottles in the offices, because this particular building, and definitely not the old courthouse, you probably don't want to be drinking fountain water if you don't have to. Let's be honest, so that's to buy the bottled water in the office is what the majority of that costs.
Is it cheaper to get at these water things, like you have in your office?
That's what that's for, yeah, that's what that's.
But some of the offices are still carrying the water bottles.
They do committee meetings and stuff,
Yeah.
generally.
Yeah, we get them for that very reason as meetings.
So let's leave this as is.
That's all food supplies.
What's the next on your list?
I was just pointing out that we have new things and I don't understand.
Yeah,
That's
Is there anything next year though that we need to change or?
not with materiality being so large now, I guess. I mean, 400,000, I don't see anybody buying water for that.
Well, no, but I mean, if you're, you know, that's comprised of 10,000 here, 400,000.
It's good water.
All right,
You want to talk about Mr. Ellis's budget next?
yeah, let's,
But
well, let's,
there's,
go ahead. Mr.
go
Boyd.
ahead, no,
No, you,
it's, I mean, there are items in here I just don't remember, but I'll,
okay,
Might I suggest the possibility we go through Mr. Ellis's, but that time it'll be lunch.
all right,
Take your lunch break, it'll give Terry time during lunch to
all right.
what y'all she's concerned
if y'all don't
about.
wanna look at items,
We'll look at them after lunch if you have time.
I wanna look at them.
Yeah, I mean, if
Let's have lunch, you got some
let's
time.
take care of Mr. Ellis, because that's a big chunk.
Yeah.
We can break the lunch, come back.
what about ECC? Yeah, they've been here all
Hey,
day.
you got rid of there's nothing.
He got rid of all the cuts.
Well, he's wondering about the cuts we made the other day, I think.
Well, those are still in there. I mean, the
We'll
cuts
see
we
if
made
he brings-
previously are still in, but the additional requested cuts are not now, so. But there will be we're gonna have to submit a hearing. What we're gonna have to do is submit a complete budget with all the updated, numbers, and then there will be a hearing for potential changes.
So we'll be an opportunity for us
Yes.
to
Yes,
request when you cut.
yes, there will be another opportunity.
So basically, after we reconsolidate the budget and notify the department, there'll be at least 10 business days to give you time to respond back with a second request. And we'll come back for a hearing.
This,
As always.
today was about finalizing one, and these are not the final units. Sorry, if that was misunderstood.
No, I was just gonna kill two birds with one stone, and so, yeah, send it back time later.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right, good. Roger that. Okay,
If we can go over the highways, Brown, show first where we're at. If you look, Tony's current estimate is 1,557,000.
Can I just get on the page? Y'all send that too
Yeah.
fast for me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, where's the page?
Let me go and get you the page number. Highways on page number 106. We're looking right now. And then you gotta remember, these are reprints, so they should be they have touched highway, they should be the same.
Same as the old.
So right now, if we look with our best estimate, and I'm gonna talk to Toby about the current revenues a little more, we made him talk the other day. You go on down Miss Browning, says 15570, 562 is there's 14% of, Mr. Ellis's, appropriations for the year, he's going down. The estimate for any operation fund would be 212 of 1.84, so just to let you know, he's about $291,000 currently, $210 below the minimum desired by the state, probably the best number to have. The minimum, anything below 1 foot, they'll actually start giving us letters, and that's 924, she's actually 633 above that, so he's not really to the desired, but he's not to the, I guess, for the best word, critical at this point.
Is that fund balance?
Yeah, that's his estimated fund balance.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But we didn't look at it because he has a lot of state aid funds that may or may not show up in there.
You got fund balance up there, is that the code?
That's just,
Right there, so that's your, so, I just want to get back, so we're down a bit from year over year.
Still, that's a conservative, well, we showed that if you look last year, we're better than last year.
We're better than last year, but we're down from prior years. How's it look in the past, when we look at 20, 21, 22?
You mean actual?
Yeah, just the fund balance. I mean, we've spoken a lot about the general fund balance.
There's something
Yeah.
back to 2000 already.
So this one, I think we need to actually,
I just want to look at it.
well, I think we need to move some pennies into it, because if we don't,
There's always spend more or cut back on expenses.
well,
I know.
but here's the thing.
All my
If
constituents, for the most part, say, take care of the roads.
we don't,
I know.
this is one of those things that they're fine while they've got the capital going. But if we don't start to burn in a little bit, he's gonna complete all that, and you're gonna have a big gap.
And I'll tell you, I got one citizen that talks to me all the time. They may live at my house, and they said, you better put money in asphalt any day you get to. So
Well, they've got asphalt, again, this is not about tomorrow, this is about 3 years from now.
Moving.
Right, exactly.
So if you look at
That's why I'm asking
history,
to go back.
let's go back to history. If you look back in 11 at 3.3, so it does vary, 2.1, 2.1. We got down to actually the lowest, about $1 billion up there, which was 2020. It's actually been up for a while. So the thing we've got right now is Toby usually has a fair amount of unspent fund balance, so it's going to make this number potentially better.
How did our fund balance go down when we used it so many millions?
When did it go down?
25. Oh, it's not down, I'm sorry. Well, our budget number was off.
Well, if you look at the expenditure number, it's quite a bit different.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Oh, I'm sorry, I was
right.
looking at the wrong.
I'm
sorry, I was looking at the wrong line.
So we're,
But the reason I bring this up, not as much about his fund balance, is actually looking on projections at this point better than last year, is Mr. Ellis had some requests the other day, and one of them, I'll go through first, is a litter grant, which is a complete flow through, if you go to that there, 80.
so I had come here today prepared to try to find a quarter of a penny to move into there, but given that we've just done this whole penny change and there's some assumptions, I kind of want to leave this alone now and just see. I just want to see, to Ms. Boyd, your point earlier, we have a balanced budget now across the general fund. This budget is balanced as well. We know you have some work you need. We got a lot of moving pieces, and we know you have some work that you need to do on two fronts. One, you need to move that penny over. And two, you need to make something. You need to revise some estimates based on one, updated sales tax that's going to come in on the 15th. Those numbers are going to come in, and two, making some adjustments to, depending on that, what our overall revenue projections is. What our overall revenue projections are based on what we think the trajectory of the overall economy is going to be. That could be a $500,000 difference.
Plus, we need to look at your long-term planning sheet to see how the highway breaks down on that.
So what I would like to do before making any, this is my opinion, I want to leave this alone because
I just have a question about this page before we go.
yeah, and go ahead.
Well, I understand what the litter collection is and that we take the inmates out in full guard. What kind of instructional supplies do those inmates need, or what is the 26,000? And I just can't in my mind figure out what kind of instructional supplies are on that litter. Is that tools?
Some of that,
Education and
Yeah.
schools. Did you ever see the thing that says keep the roads clean and all that stuff?
I didn't know. I mean,
They have to use so much of it to do advertising and education and
oh, good.
it's not all cleanup.
Does anybody want to make any changes to highway now?
The only thing I'm saying is one thing really quick, two things. If you look at the litter grant, it actually is bringing in $87,800. If the committee's okay versus the one working through those tiny amounts, if you're okay for me to adjust, because part of it was to do with salaries and various supplies, but it's flowing through, or you guys final say it's adjusted to $87,800.
Anybody got an issue with that, letting him adjust?
I just want to make sure he has enough gas. I mean, it's not much money, but are we doing less litter pickup?
That would be a question for,
I don't care. I mean, he's cutting his own budget, but I just wonder if we're doing less.
well, he just moved them out to random litter grant. The litter grant actually went up to maybe about 87, 8. Well, I said I'm gonna adjust those lines around and pick up the additional $2,700 for the grant that everybody's fine with.
Yeah.
And you'll get another chance to look at the budget draft if that.
Might want to motion that.
Okay, I'll make a motion to allow, the finance department to, make individual adjustments sufficient to pick up $2,700 within his litter.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And then two more items we brought up, and he just sent me an email about it, but this may be for his second hearing. And he mentioned the other day, just make sure they weren't being overlooked. He asked for the part-time to be moved to full, and then he asked for a full-time.
I say we wait on that until we, because those are going to be, again, I'm saying this, I am in favor of moving some funds over, but to Ms. Boyd's point, and to the fact that we've done a lot of shifting today, I just think let's just wait, because I'm hopeful, because I too bet on Sumner County, that that little red that we saw in the sales tax drops is not going to be repeated, that we'll revise revenues up a little bit, and then we'll have, additional couple $100,000 that we can play with, while leaving everything else the same. I'm hopeful for that, but, we don't know today, so, any other, I think we can break for lunch.
I don't think so.
Is it not?
Will you want to break and go ahead and sit in there and let everybody go through those large options?
Yeah, because the only thing we have left is long-term planning, right?
Right, and we were gonna wait and see where you're going.
Yeah, so we're almost done.
We're gonna work up your long.
Do we have anything else we need to get?
Not today. Other than with these large
We
items.
could just take, if we want to just motion to, well, no, we want to take these items from the board.
So I think the best thing is to go ahead and go on an early news break, that way Terry can start looking at her stuff.
I'll bring us, and then we'll come back and sit down and lunch. Thanks, guys.
You can go get somebody, get you some, Hostess.
Or we call up there to get it.
No, he said we need to
So
call.
let's, are we doing capital or are we doing election?
Capital election, and I think David has a question about the, and I can go through that really quickly if you want to.
Yeah, if we can do that, we'll do the pennies first, you can do just a 5-minute overview, and then we'll move to, let's do capital after that.
Where we start?
Let's do election after
Penny.
that.
Okay.
Penny,
And
election,
then we
capital.
Before we get started, I want to clear one thing up. With the Gallatin HVAC, it is not actually on that list. It should have been on that list.
Library?
Yeah, the Gallatin Library. It should have been on that list, but I went back to check the list, and all the libraries are on there except for them.
I make a motion to add the
I seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
How much money are we estimating?
She had $25,000, no, $20,000 in her long-term planning / capital this month for this coming up fiscal year. But she said she wasn't sure that it would need to be replaced. So if you have them in the assessment line, then.
I'll get with Comfort Group and see where they are with the assessment of those units there. Because we won't replace them until they go out.
So here's,
Yeah,
I don't know, you have a fund for that, right?
I have no idea.
You have a fund for that, right?
Yeah, so all that'll fall in that.
It's in you, not her.
There's enough in the fund.
It's in the county.
All right, then let's rock and roll.
Yeah, just leave.
Thank
Can you do a few things, thank you, sir.
Okay, David, you got to show through this, but I was about to give you another one.
Wait, is that, That's from
That's from yesterday that I
last
got
week?
everybody, last week.
Yesterday, last.
I think I left it at home.
Yeah, I guess we could better with more board members here because they might have questions too. I mean,
Well, we've only got an hour.
Yeah, I know he's got a hard, do you have one, David, or
I
not?
will have Ms. Browning see if she comes back in.
Would this be potentially one, that you could get offline with them?
I can.
Well, why don't we go through capital?
No, here's what we're gonna do.
CPAC has an online.
We're gonna do capital and then Mr. Klein.
Is this the one we?
Oh, wait, we need to go copy for everybody. That's what I did earlier, you can say, about 20 copies.
Let's do election before capital, it's more complex.
Let's start, and I know this is repetitive, so, let's go ahead and start getting everything here and passing it out.
We got it earlier.
Right. You got copies already, I'll pass out new copies. And there's 2 sheets of paper here to start with, we're gonna start with. And one you'll recognize is the benchmarking that the other day that we all talked about.
We spoke that you would invite, elections today. Did you invite them? Does that take one time?
No.
Oh, okay, that's fine. They were invited?
Did we just have one?
I didn't know that.
I didn't call it that.
Why don't we go through this and then we'll call her and see if she can answer some of the
We
questions.
may have that.
Go ahead,
I do.
I'm very
I do.
interested. You can go
Here you
ahead.
go.
We're going through the benchmarking, I'll call.
Mayor.
Everybody's got stuff from last night.
21.
You need
And I'm gonna go ahead and pass out another couple handouts, because they all ride one after the other.
I'm putting a page thing on there.
This one's a missile. And I try not to pass everything out before we need it, because what it does is people have some space.
Take one, pass one.
If you've been here last night, we did 2 hours of it last
Yeah,
night.
you don't take it there.
Oh, no.
Sorry, I missed it.
Oh, are you?
Can you go ahead and pass them out?
Had other obligations.
Wait, are these the same?
Well, I thought we were gonna do just our election. You might wanna watch it, maybe they can run like.
Yeah.
We got that. We got that.
We can-
These are 2 pages, but they're kind of offset. Just make sure you get both pages.
And this one right here, does everybody have this one right here first? It's the benchmarking that we discussed a couple of times.
Right.
And I want to sit down and talk because there's nothing on the screen at this point, so. So, Dave, are you ready in this,
I'm ready.
Okay. So what we got, this is the benchmarking from the other day, and we compared the 4 counties. We did not include Williamson County, if you remember from our discussion, because their benefits is paid from another line item, so it would not be comparable. So what we did is we took the first one on cost per capita, is actually the total cost for theirs divided by the estimated population for, the counties. And the first one came in, and we have them listed here on the front, Wilson, DeKalb, Sumner, Rutherford, and Montgomery.
Mhm.
Then we came in the cost per registered voters, which is the actual total cost of their department divided by the total, or the average registered voters, which if there's 2 elections that year, we added the 2 together and divided by 2, so it's the average. And then the other one, with the cost per vote cast, and we took the total budget and just divided it by the total number of votes cast that year that was on the state website. And we kind of came up with the highest and lowest ranking, and we looked at them, but do remember, we're only looking at large numbers, as Ms. Ashley says, and I think she's going to try to come and explain, there is some potential significant differences between the counties. The other one, as I came by, and I actually provided you on the next page over. And I'm going through this quickly because it's very, we went over it the other day with the background information.
Right.
That gives you the statistical data for the November and the August elections for the 4 counties. Gives you the total registered voters, the cast votes, the turnouts, and it gives you some very valuable statistical data. The next table right below that, David, is actually the original budgets on the election commission.
So I just spoke with Annette, and they're on a call right now, a lengthy call with the state regarding changes to election law, so they're not going to be able to be here.
Okay, I'll just go through it.
Yeah, I told them that they're going to get another hearing anyway, so let's just go ahead.
So when you go through here, you look at the original budgets, and a couple of things to point out. If you look at on page 2, in 2022, the Sumner County was the most expensive, but it's no longer the most expensive. It's kind of following, other than Wilson County, very similar cost, budget patterns to the other counties. If you look at those, David.
So we were the most expensive for a 2-year period.
For
Or
about a year period.
maybe a year, 2.5-year period.
About a year period. We were the most expensive, yeah. On the budget you were. So we went ahead and we did that, and we compared it, and we showed you, just right below that, the table, the actual, budgets, the original budgets that were in there.
Mm-hmm.
That way, if you want to see the information, you know, these are just points that gives you a little more detail. And then we went ahead, and the other question that always comes up for everybody when they try to compare a benchmark is how many full-time employees. If you look, Sumner is number 2, Rutherford number 1, Montgomery number 3, and Wilson has the least. Falls pretty close to, Wilson has the lowest population, Rutherford the most, and then Montgomery, so that's the Montgomery split around on that. But I don't know the true reasoning. And to try to give you a fair comparison, because we're only looking at budgets, we actually went ahead and looked at actuals. And we did that through 2024. If you look, everybody follows a very similar pattern on the sheet except for Wilson County. We don't know how they keep their smooth, and it's just not comparable. But we do notice that the actual most expensive election commission in 22 was Sumner County, but for 23 and 24 it was not, but it does follow the same patterns. I know you guys have seen this before, so I'm going through it very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And the next is your estimated populations, and the reason this is important to show, out of the groups that we actually tested, Sumner County is the slowest growth county, and, you know, the Wilson, the smallest county in the selected group, just to make sure you get a fair comparison. Now, here's where we come into last night's discussion from the audit committee, because everybody knew we're going into the audit committee. And you have a couple of worksheets, and Matt was there last night. You have this sheet. Does everybody have this sheet?
Mm-hmm. I do, sometimes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Maybe some copies here, some of them.
This one,
Okay,
you got it.
got it.
I should have an actual expenditure report. This one?
Yes.
Okay. So here's your report items, okay?
It's on, but it doesn't work. It's pointed at the thing. It's running,
Can it hear
but
us?
it's not,
If
I
it-
don't know.
If it can hear us, then we're fine.
I can just see the screen and it's,
This is on too as a backup, so.
I just wanna say, I don't know what the lights are not on it, are they?
It does, I don't see lights, that's why I asked.
It's my responsibility, I'll let y'all know, that's all,
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay. So we come up here, this was the discussion last night from the audit committee. If you look at, this is the actual expenditure report year to date for the election commission. Okay. Most of your overages in one place, it is in the election workers. 52,721.13. All your overage is not in that line item, but the majority is.
Yeah, it's this one here.
If you look, about 1/4 of the way down the front page on the right, that is your budget variance. You see that number says 118.8%, and then you see the 52,721.13. That is the actual budget variance for that department. So when we started looking at a couple of things, there was a discussion that budget committee had decreased the line item, but if you pull up this sheet, it looks like this. And you go down about 1/4 of the way, you're gonna see the line item that's called election work. If you look at that, it's got last year's budget going from left to right to 126,345. The request is 277,219. The amount approved by the budget committee was 280,000, which is actually more than what was requested. So to come back and look at those closely, we went back, or I went back and did this analysis on the actual election workers. This sheet looks like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
If you look at the top, there's like this nice little box, and if you start from the left to the right, the very first grouping is fiscal year 2025, okay? You know, it's got the name of the county, and it'll have your election dates, okay? It'll say election date November 5th, 2024, August 1, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's your total of 137,699. That is the total number of registered voters for each one of those elections. Well, what I did was took the average number of registered voters. Some of those are overlapped, they're different. But that's your average number, the 137,699, that is the average number of registered voters. The next is votes cast. the 98 and the 19, which makes 118,210. We add those together because those are individual votes cast, and then the next number is your number of voting precincts, followed by the next number over the 332, 731, 13. That's the total amount of election expenditures that year. Okay, when you go in here and look, it has percentage change and it gives you the information. If you look at the first one, the number of registered voters are up 14.81%. The total number of votes cast is down by a little bit less than 1%. Your total number of precincts from 29 to 28 below it, if you look right below it, is a 3.55, almost 4%, 3.57% increase. And then if you take your 332,000 expenditure and compare it to the 252 right below it, that's a 32% increase. So that kind of gives you the numbers, and the same thing for the 21 and 17 because of presidential elections every 4 years. So that kind of shows you how the cost and your number of votes increased. And we followed it to give you as a committee all the details. These are actually out of our financials. It shows for each year the original budget, the amount spent, the amount adjusted for the election committee. There's a little square box on the side. The only thing we're signifying is the 24 number you're seeing. It actually includes a special election for Millersville. It's not listed up here. The actual statewide site did not have the statistics for the special election, but we did pay $20,000 for election workers, and the city of Millersville did reimburse us.
That's the 20,120?
Yes, 20,120 on the right of the box. That's just to signify that. The other question that came up last night, and I requested from the election committee, is the amount they're paying the poll workers. Looking there on the state website from the Tennessee Treasury or Secretary of Treasury, it says that that's determined by your local election commission. And then following that, I actually provided you all the data for every election, not necessarily the one that lines up with the year in discussion, which is 25. The thing you can see is that if you go back to page 1, that in summary, overall cost of election workers this year went up 32%, a 4% increase roundabout on the number of precincts, a small decrease in your number of votes cast, and about 15% increase in your total registered voters. The one thing this does not cover is there was other things, because Ms. Ashley sent an email saying that the election machines were around 50 pounds, so it took more people to carry the election machine. Does not account, I don't know if they had too many people in lines last time, or there's some kind of distribution issue, because if you look at the numbers really close, if you look at the votes cast for 98,508, that's actually up, and that's in your presidential. The one that was down is actually the primary.
So I'm just going to interject real quick to summarize, because we went through, you could spend a lot of time on this, and we did last night. At the end of the day, a few things are true. David hit on a couple of them. One, although her increase that you're looking at 32% seems high, the behavior patterns of her department seem to be more or less in line with all the other kind of up and down behavior patterns of the other counties, with the exception of Wilson. I don't know what Wilson's doing, but they're doing something right. And Terry's got some other notes on this too that she's brought to light. So that's one. So the other thing is, at one point, our election commission was truly kind of outside of what you would think is a reasonable deviation from the mean of other comparable counties, but that's no longer the case. Our election commission spend is still on the high side against comparable counties, but it's no longer, way out. So it's been constricted a little bit. So, those are kind of the general findings here. So she's within bounds, the election commission's within bounds, but it's, Ms. Ashley's team is not wildly out of bounds. I want to make note of a few things before we go down too many rabbit holes here. We took some action last night in the audit committee. One is to have the budget committee as a part of normal budget operations. Two things. One was budget operations. Yeah, that's right. So that's right. So we are going to Yeah, I'm forgetting, no, November, one.
You were gonna ask Ms. Ashley to the budget.
That's right.
committee to discuss
That's, but,
the issue.
I just did that, and she can't come, so, at the end, sorry, it's right after lunch. So, they're not able to make it today. I think what I want to avoid right now, because we don't have a ton of time, is going down like too many kind of operational rabbit holes, because we tried to do that last night, and we got to a point where we're like, we don't know, and we kind of need their input. So, I think what we would be best served to do today is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is to go ahead and set an amount that we think is reasonable for that department to operate with this year, and decide if we want to fund the convenience voting centers. Make those initial determinations now, and then schedule them to come in for a meeting. I think those are really the decisions we have before us, as opposed to going down, really detailed operational stuff. So, anyway, I'll open it, well, I've got some comments on this, but I just spoke a lot. I'll open the floor for any other comments on the election commission.
You do, and anything that you do here, they will get a second or a time to appeal.
Right.
So, the thing is, if Ms. Ashley disagrees, she can come back at the next budget hearing and appeal whatever action you guys do tonight. And she should be able to hear that one explained to you in more detail of the managerial issues that may be involved in this.
Ms. Boyd?
So, I'm reading a lot of stuff that's coming from the federal level. A lot of, and I've spoken that, I've been reading these things, and that the federal level is going to push down. They cannot dictate what the state and the county does, but they can definitely define what the federal elections does. And there's changes coming. I'm not in favor of voting centers because it looks like that they're suggesting that we go back to smaller precincts, and that they're going to demand that on the federal side. That hasn't happened, but my understanding is it's coming in the next 2 months.
So your argument is that if we make this change, it's gonna be a moot point anyway.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't want to invest in voting centers if it's going, I'd like to see what this administration does through the next cycle before we go there.
Okay, I mean,
If we're putting infrastructure into buildings we don't even own, we don't know what the climate looks
Yeah, that's
like,
fair.
and it, I mean, I'm reading, it's coming,
that's fair.
and I'm reading it very strongly.
Stay with,
I understand that they've got maybe $150,000 in capital improvements to the TRC building.
There were several adjustments
Did we pull that out?
We need to go back and look because there were several adjustments on the fly. I believe you've got part of those out and part of those not.
Well, it just seems to me that whatever they're doing, they should be running through general office.
Yeah, so therefore,
We can go up a little bit on the budget.
Can we look through?
there's convenience voting and TRC.
I think if you roll up papers, one, two.
Okay, the TRC is pulled too? Okay.
I think I had a couple more questions on that.
so we did full convenience?
Yes, we did, but I wanted to make a comment, but we'll go, you and Keith. Because I was gonna make a comment about convenience voting.
Piggybacking off of what Commissioner Boyd said,
Okay.
she said, if we go to convenience voting, it'll be one machine per 10,000 voters. If we keep it the way it is precinct-wise, then it's not one machine, but it's one center per 6,000 voters, not machine per voters. So if you're saying that if we may have to go to smaller things, if eventually we do go to convenience, we're going to have, like she said, I think 7 more stations, so it would have gone from 29 to 36. I just think these are things we just need to keep in mind and not forget.
So, go ahead.
But that's all. That's all.
I will say that after the last meeting, I have up till that meeting been strongly against convenience voting. That meeting, I don't know that it fully changed my mind, but it definitely shifted my mindset once I understood that convenience voting was truly a one-time expense. So I'm on the fence with, I really would wanted to hear from them again on this, whether to do it or not. But I don't know quite how to do it because we can't pull it out of capital, and we're really tight on it. We're really tight on on our general fund. We just went a lot of hash about that, so I'm not quite sure how to do it, that's one. The second thing, and I think Ms. Boyd probably pushed me a bit the other direction, if we are looking at potential changes, it's kind of like a wait and see might be the right call here. But the third thing I want to kind of comment, and this does get into operations, I don't want to go crazy with it, but I do think it should inform like the numbers that we put as a baseline and really inform the line of question that we have. Ms. Boyd put together a nice document of the total hours that our centers are open versus the hours that the other centers are open. I'm going to hand it to her just a second. It's illuminating. I had argued that wasn't a fair comparison because they were hours, not man hours. But then in a follow-on discussion that we had right after the last meeting, I think Ms. Boyd's there's a point there that, yes, we don't know what the number of employees are, but we can absolutely normalize off of customer service because we do have those numbers. And so given that, I think we can I think there's pretty compelling evidence that we are not necessarily, we are more efficient than we used to be, but to your point last night, maybe we keep squeezing a little bit, but I'll hand it to you.
So, and I have to say, when Lori says it's hard to compare, it made my eyes cross, and when we get finished, I want to send this back to finance so they can recount. So what I did is I was able to find on the Secretary of State site the Sumner County hours of early voting for coming into, I just used the November to the October because that was the hours that were out there. And I compared them to Sumner County, Wilson, and Montgomery. So last night we talked about just Montgomery, and Mr. Loring pointed out, because they probably have a higher absentee ballot voter, that they would have less days. So in their days, so I'll just talk about the days first, because it's the hours that's the thing. In Sumner County, if we look at just early voting, because that's what Commissioner Becker wanted to focus on, was in Sumner County, we have, by my calculations, 35 days of early voting leading into that November. And in Wilson County, they had 56 days of open. Now, when I look at it on the graph, I'm like, on the benchmarking, I know where Wilson is and I know where we're at. And Montgomery County had 25 days open. But that might be because it's less people face-to-face and more absentee. But then it's the hours. So when I look at, and that was one of the things that I discussed with Ms. Ashley, is they wanted to have more voters. Why did they close on noon on Saturday? Because we've all been outside, and there's people still driving in after the place is closed, and people still wanting to come. We closed at noon. Wilson closes at 1, and Montgomery on Saturday closed, well, they have extended hours. I didn't write that down, but 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock at one location. So our total hours that we are servicing for early hours is 261. Sumner County, 261. Wilson County is providing 520 hours. So, yeah, but we can see on the benchmark where we line up with costs, we're really kind of not too far.
Whatever Wilson is doing, we need to figure it out.
And I'm telling you, this is another conversation, but this is what Wilson County has. Look at this. I told you before, I'm like, you should see clear government. Look at that.
Oh, that's nice.
Isn't that sweet? It's a subscription, and they'll pull it right off of our Munis system, I think.
That's nice.
And we could budget for something like this. You see it?
That's a clear
Clear, yes, it is. Isn't it true? I know.
So, in any case, I'm saying all that to say that, or Ms. Boyd, are you complete?
Yeah, Mayor, do you want to? I only have one copy.
It's a good analysis, and I mean, at the end of the day, I think there are some, we're getting all this evidence around the edges that, there are efficiencies to be had. We don't have the ability to direct some of this stuff, but I think that we can use that to inform what we do here. I was actually going to come here and make a motion to move some pennies for convenience voting, knowing that would encounter some resistance. But given what Ms. Boyd just said, I don't know that I want to make that motion anymore unless somebody else does. I think I might be in the room and she can't now. Does anybody want to make a motion? Because one question we have to do is, do we want to fund convenience voting right now? That's it.
Convenience voting, though, is on election day.
Right,
Is it
but
just
it
the
has
one day?
implications of.
Every site.
For all the sites, for all other.
Right, but I'm just saying, we need to be clear, convenience voting, early voting is convenience voting, because you can go to any of those locations and vote.
Right.
And then, ideally, your name is stricken from the records, and then you cast your vote, it's gone, okay? So, for people who might be concerned about double voting. But the convenience voting that I understood it with the 36 locations would be on election
Right.
day proper.
You are correct, but but you mentioned earlier,
But
the broader,
29, not 36.
the broader implications is the total amount of.
We would need fewer convenience
Yeah.
voting stations.
Right, but you're right, and so that's the broader implication of it, but given both of the things that Ms. Boyd brought up, one regarding the federal changes, and two, that like clearly there's still some efficiencies to be had, I'm of the opinion we don't do convenience voting, we normalize against previous years and kind of like keep it where it is.
Point out one thing really quick. When you're talking about early voting versus election day, if you look at the benchmarking, Sumner County on the presidential, which was your largest election, 64.66% actually cast early vote, so you had the vast majority. Now, when you go back into the primary, you were slightly under 50%. We actually had the lowest percentage of early voting on the primary. And then I want to point out one thing that you mentioned. You had asked earlier about capitalization. Our policy is anything under $7,500 not capitalized, but technically you can capitalize anything that's capital in nature. So the question was, we won't own those buildings, but with an MOU, those lines you technically can do it. But you want to go down that path.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to go down that path until I heard this. Like, I really did want to, and maybe we do, but, you know, if we've got some time to wait, like.
Are you thinking wait because this 26th election is not a presidential?
Correct.
So you're saying, let's get through one more and consider it for the 27 fiscal year?
Because at that point, the feds are going to make whatever changes they're going to make.
Oh, yeah, because Congress may completely change over.
Completely, we don't know, but it's just, there's enough in flux, and there's not like a pressing need. We could get it done if it does make sense, we could get it done between 2026 and 2028.
And I've done that job, I think I've worked through, I know 3 full presidential election cycles, so for 12 years. Or 8 years, I did that. And I know it's hard work, it's labor intensive, I understand everything about the location, being at the location.
Right.
I don't understand how it works in the office, but I will say, when speaking to her budget, but when I looked at some of those hours too, and I looked at we could do statewide, it's 20 days before election day, it must be finished 5 days before. It doesn't say a specific number of days in what I looked at. And we could do 1 week in Gallatin and 1 week in Hendersonville, and they do the satellite days. But I still don't know, especially in a presidential election, you're going to have so many, if you reduce the amount of days that it's open for early voting, you're going to have more people. So does it reduce anything? Because she's going to need more machines, she's going to need more staff, and that is not my job to figure out what she needs. And I don't want to do that, but I don't want us to prepay for something that an executive order or something wipes out, because we are really still in that honeymoon period with this president, and we still don't know what we're looking at.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, what's our current budget on there? Like, we would just, I think what we would do.
Look at
Let's look at it and normalize against over years.
Let me clear what road I was speaking of that. Earlier I was talking about capital projects. We have a capitalization threshold of $7,500. We have never budgeted anything under $7,500, but according according to the GASB, dialects and GASB, we can as long as it's capital in nature. So technically, you can.
Well, no, I know, but it sounds to me like we don't want to. Just from a policy point of view.
It was $1 million ask.
Yeah, so.
900 and something.
60,000 for 1090, the modifications for building.
Let's just go to there. I mean, what I'm thinking of doing
I'm
here
just looking at the operating.
is, I assume at this point, is to normalize against, I guess, 2022. That's, I think, the right year to normalize against. Or to take the 2014, 2018, 2020, and 22 line and normalize that one. Not the non-election years, but the non-presidential years.
We come on presidential, so you do 22. Yeah, you're on high 22.
Yeah, go to 22. We'll go, we'll look at 2021.
21 would be a,
Yeah, that's right, so it'd be 2022.
here's the first one that Mr. Boyd was over there asking about. This one says communication, Union School Road, for $430.
Like I said earlier, like new items, we're not,
Let's just strike it, and then, you know,
I think
you
we
come
should-
back,
yeah.
that's fine, just strike it.
Yeah, that's the building they're in, they shouldn't need any of
Yeah,
that.
just strike it. Okay,
And I'm still trying to line up with where we're at. Are we at the bottom of theirs, going up? Is that what we're doing, going up?
I'm trying to look at their pay.
What page are you on, Terry?
I'm not lined up.
Oh, you're not lined up?
I mean, they're on page 36 on the operating
But I
budget.
just want to look at their, cut that.
And then this one is more in detail, more line items.
Election, look at overtime too, like election workers.
Election workers and overtime is an election worker.
So,
Yeah, it's big jump in
Yeah, so
overtime
why-
from 7,900 to 56,000.
so, but if we're looking at, I mean, this is what we should be looking at here. This is 2025, this is a presidential year, 2026 should not be a presidential year, so this should come down to like, way down on that.
Yeah, I agree.
That
I
should
saw
be
that
down
was
like, you know,
1.5%.
I mean, what you do is.
You know, we saw 30% on some of the other numbers.
Yeah,
We
but-
saw 30%.
But I mean, what we want to do is we want to take the line from all your non-election years, going back about 10 years, and follow that up.
So what increase, because you're gonna look at from 30%,
So,
the last two, so if you take 130% of 130,000,
so,
$169,000,
about 107,000, yeah, something like that.
you don't get the salary sheet you get.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you can get, 170, 180, not 280.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
doing
I'm
different
following.
math, and I'm saying it's 26,000.
Now, this is the election workers, right? See, here's our problem. We have 8 workers. We have more full-time workers. But when did we get them? When did they increase their
We're on
employees?
all workers basis. So what amount did you guys fall back to?
So, what we're trying to do, Beth, is,
So these are the temporary workers.
Did one say, no, this is your poll workers, working at the poll, you have part-time that's above.
Oh, I see.
These people put out the machines,
How
work
much
on
do
the poll.
poll workers make now? Do they make a set amount
Is it
per
in the-
day?
Yes, and it was the schedule I passed
So
out
it's
last
not
night.
an
at the,
hourly, it's not an hourly.
I don't, so I
Uh-huh.
think, let's push it away. Are you good with that, Terry?
I think,
I mean, that's more than a 34% kind of bump on a
Okay.
like-over-like year.
she's liking it for presidential year. That's
So
what
I'll
she's
calculate
budgeting.
I'm gonna go 35% times, what was it, 130, I think?
130.
135, so 1.35 times 130, 175, so, 180.
180.
180. And let's start,
And that's like
that's a
38%.
That's $100,000, break down $108,000 on that.
Yeah. That's $100,000.
$108,400.
I mean, I think it's justified.
I do
I mean,
too.
year over, she was budgeting for another presidential.
Another president, exactly, with bump.
Yeah,
That doesn't make sense.
unless there's gonna be another presidential, we don't know if she has left for.
All right. If that, then it's not an election. We don't know.
Anybody aware of the election?
That's a real special election right there.
Let's go back to the main, well, let's just look over, I'll tell you what everybody is.
Yeah, the overtime went, like, we
I'm on camera too.
we've put out, for overtime, we had basically $8,000, and now we've jumped to $56,000.
Where's
If
that
I'm
at?
looking at my sheet, I don't know, you have to go to another sheet. Right there, see?
Oh, right here.
But why am I seeing expenditures for 2024?
So,
Am I on the wrong page?
wait. 56,000, what was the 2022?
Where's that there? Why doesn't he
Well,
say?
remember, one's presidential, the other one is.
He's not seeing that.
This is 2026.
Hey, Matt, you're not seeing one number for some reason.
Well,
The actual.
Go to 2022.
You'll be on the page. That's 2022 on this sheet.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I wanted.
Send me a appendix.
It'll be over on the,
And
main
A4.
subdivision sheet.
No, I just don't think that this sheet has that on it.
What we were looking at there,
This is all on nuts.
Well, I think
Yeah, that's it right there,
Let's
Matt.
make
You see what I'm seeing now, the 8,000 to
I think on
26.
nuts, I think that 25 column there.
That's
is a different-
exactly what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
this should be back down into these levels, like $15,000.
They want that in red.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
mean, minus 50,000. It's like, I don't understand. I mean, that's repeating the same thing.
oh, yeah, that was, that,
No, you were queuing on there, I was queuing on there.
Well, when he's on that one, that makes
They have on overtime on this.
but we can't, I'm only looking at 26, it doesn't go back one.
and this is overtime for our full-time employees, because
Yes, ma'am.
day workers are a set rate, I just want to clarify.
This should be comparable to this, the 50, well, maybe more than 16, I'm gonna do 15,000, 1.35.
Overtime right now, they have spent 35,000 to 1181.
But that's election.
Right.
Presidential. And I just want to put in a piece, I think we're gonna have to redo elections if they do change federal elections. So,
So this should be 20,000, 25, this is 21,000. Right there, I just did, here's some math I did there.
oh, I'm good with you.
Alright. I wanna do this one time, 1.35.
no, I can change it here.
Sorry.
There's benefits calculated too. So we've got benefits involved in that.
Gotcha.
What was that one?
You wanted 21?
21,000.
So we need to minus 10,000, 9,600.
And the current, his budget is that 25, right, and overtime? That 29,735 is this year.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
That
so
was
I'm
their
making
budget.
sure, yes, I'm looking, I was making sure that we've got the date. I don't see it.
Okay. And I know what you, like, I'm sure I know where some of those numbers came from. Some of those numbers you're probably calculating up the additional, precincts you're saying that you're gonna need.
Can we,
Given the hour comparison that we're looking at, I don't know if I'm on.
So I think the postal charges, if we can go to that, I think the postal charges is so she can send out notifications for the voters.
Precinct locations are based on numbers of registered voters, but if there is some type of,
Quickly, what I'm saying is, if we get the same amount of hour efficiency, maybe we have too many poll workers at each of those locations, which is mine.
So I think,
You could spread them out.
I think postal charges are up because she's gonna put out a mailer to let everybody know where their new convenient voting centers were.
It sure seems like they've got a ton
So
of
why,
workers.
that's the
at
only reason I
precincts.
should think it went up $25,000.
Well,
Oh, and then it's postal.
She did,
you have
she mentioned
one per,
something
We would do it
one
at
per
shop.
machine.
yeah.
She
Okay,
said
wait.
something about also they requiring
One
them
per
versus the state to
voting
verify it.
Yeah, there's some new requirements that we had there. That one may be
Let's
justified.
leave it. And we don't have to transfer.
Right.
One there,
Right,
one per, have a direct election.
Okay.
okay.
Anything else on
And
this
then,
one?
at least
That's
pay director,
application.
you'll need
So you have
paper,
an assistant,
print and stationery, whatever, but
that's what we
maybe,
ran.
whatever they're mailing out,
Well,
they're gonna
these
have to
are
have on
probably,
paper.
this is probably the same, these are probably the latest.
Whatever their
Not
drugs and medical
How we
supplies,
What is
not
it?
much,
And she was
What is it?
involved.
drugs and medical supplies.
No.
It's actual printed items, not paper.
Paper
No, I meant
is office
printed,
supplies.
printing.
Okay.
So I don't know why they need drugs and medical supply for almost $1,000.
Well, I mean, I can buy that if you're on site, you may want, you may want your.
Tylenol?
That's had nothing usually.
What? Yeah, because when you're there, I never worked early voting, but election day, you're supposed to get an hour for lunch. You get there at 6:30 in the morning, you're there until
So
every last
Tylenol?
table is put in the thing. What?
$850.
I guess so. Maybe we need Band-Aids. Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
General construction materials, is that so they can work on the building they're in?
I'm gonna let you try that.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on general construction. Could be light bulbs, it could be
But those are not
space
buildings.
heater,
It's not our building.
fans. Yeah, but they all,
Well, they got that other building, but I say we strike it and let them come down. That's my opinion.
Office supplies went up 20%. A ton of money.
I'm good either however y'all wanna do it. You wanna leave it, or what do you wanna do with it? To construct this 1,000 right here, you wanna strike it, make it justified, you wanna change this one down to 12,000?
Well,
I'd say strike it and let's find out what it is.
Strike this one,
I wanted to strike everybody's budget that grew, for,
16,675.
just to find out what people were doing.
I don't know if I'd fool with instructional supplies.
They've
Because we're
never had
coming into an election year.
I just want to know what they
They have
are.
to have new, because they can't, when you go to training, they have to train the poll workers, they're just gonna have to train.
But she didn't do any
They print out a booklet and you take it home to study.
Okay.
You wanna leave it?
Leave it.
16,675, I would leave that down to 12,000.
Are they still in?
Has anybody got a problem with that?
No.
Alright, so that goes to
What about Holly? 25.
4675.
Go down and make sure we cut the equipment there, maybe that's what, Harry's asking, I think we did, or they did last.
It's called office equipment.
Yeah, oh, no. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And we did
We
that
started
one.
talking about it.
I'm
She was
just
here,
saying,
but
Mr. Long handed out
we didn't touch
notices
it.
that didn't have to cut.
That's from the 25, so it was wrong. This is where he came in the 25 ago. That's where we were showing why the election worked.
How it got to where it's at.
Yeah, like, you already ran about that one.
Alright,
Alright,
This is.
so that's what, cut that one, and I think we're good.
and so, can we, yeah,
Alright.
roll up a little bit, but I think I'm good for questions there.
I mean, we just removed like $150,000 of stuff there. Now, some of it maybe need to come back, but.
I think that if this federal thing goes through, we're gonna have to come and give them more money in a different way.
Probably so. I mean,
Unless the feds step in. The feds may step in and give it to us. If we go back to paper ballot, not for us to decide.
The storage.
We got 3 empty rooms downstairs.
I was gonna make a
Store
comment,
them.
I was keeping myself.
How long are they supposed to keep those tapes now? 3 years?
So lots of places do have paper ballots. More counties have paper.
I'm asking you,
and
how
what they
long do
store
we have
them,
to store them?
They store them by image.
Oh, so they're scanned, they're electronically stored.
But they don't, what they're looking at is counting them and then scanning them, not scanning them and then counting them. It's gonna be,
I see.
yeah. So that is what happens.
So I think we're through here. Is there anything else that we wanna look at? I think we've.
So my earlier thing was, not just the elections, but a lot of these have just stuck in new items that I don't know what they are.
I mean,
Can we just
we got
instruct-
30 minutes. Go ahead. You wanna just, instruct the,
Look at capital,
Now look at capital.
yeah, let's do capital. Oh, well, I was gonna, what were you gonna say?
There is one item that came up last night, and I wish the lawyer were back. He said, regarding the 81, that Mayor, you might want to listen.
I'm listening.
Okay. He said that CPAS had indicated that the 81 was in place until we finished the 12. It's everywhere, what. But the one thing is it's still highway purchasing. I'd like to look at moving resources into accounting, no matter where we end up, if they revoke the 81, we still need to move highway purchasing over to county. And if we put resources in, I know we removed their bookkeeper, but if we put that back in and took a look at that, I mean,
Well,
that's one piece that's out of compliance with both acts.
Wait. So this was the reason I had, okay, so we have a motion second, and I'm going to speak on
And I'm not talking about removing his people, I'm just talking about adding somebody and trying.
Well, I made a motion last night to get a comprehensive look from the finance department to understand what the full cost of the implementation of the 1981 Act would be. So I'm against this, but I'm just gonna tell you why. It's not because I'm necessarily a principal, but like, if we're gonna go, you're gonna give us what that project would look like. We could potentially surge capital to it and, add, like, there's a lot of different ways we could do it. But like, I think.
That one piece is for both of them.
But-
We come into compliance with both of them. We gotta do that one piece no matter what
But
we
it's
do.
the same, but here's the thing, I'm gonna make your argument about the election commission here. What this would do is we're moving a piece before we know all of them, like the way the chessboard is. We're looking at this real quick.
But if we force,
But we've got a date coming up on the 1981 versus 2012. We don't know that. I would personally like to put that off until I knew what this dollar amount was gonna be, but either way, we don't know how that vote's until we've done that. Once we've done that, then it may make sense. But anyway, you got the motion, there was a second. Any other comments on it?
to support it, I'd just like to say, either way we force, we end up, the highway needs to move over to purchasing for best practices. And we talked about it
But
last year.
how long will it take? Is what we talked about last. We talked about it last night, like, how long will it take? And so
We can't get there unless we start.
but we don't, one person, one bookkeeper may not be enough. And he's gonna give us a plan. So why
This is like you're gonna remember a couple things. One, we're gonna have somewhere to put everybody.
Yeah.
Because their office is as big as that one upstairs, and everybody.
I'm just talking about one person right now.
No, but that's,
But the other thing I'm gonna mention is, we're talking about the schools, all the people come over, so you're not talking, that's kind of a wash.
yeah.
This one here is for highway and to do with things where we've already done implementations and we're running a lot of overtime. That's what the original request here was for, was all overtime, and we need help already up there, that was the original bookkeeper request. But the highway department does not have a significant number of POs, so we think we could probably absorb it if we did get the count no matter what.
If you got the bookkeeper.
The bookkeeper we need anyway, that's what I'm saying. Well, that's really kind of two issues, because the original budget had two things in there, a lot of overtime and that. We removed the overtime and the bookkeeper, so.
So you think you could do, what would be your time frame? Because I'm just,
Yeah, you guys-
we've gone down this path before, and then.
If the committee goes in and they have the authority, and say you put them in July 1, we hire somebody in September, and they change that policy September 1, we could have the POs over, highway pretty easy.
When you say they would be over, would there be any decrease in, like, Mr. Ellis's problem with the time, just wouldn't be done in time, like that?
It's not, it's usually done in an hour, that's kind of what we're, it's like if it's an emergency, and that was mentioned, we have a policy. It says if you have an emergency.
No, I know.
You have an emergency, and you have 24 hours to get a PO. The problem is people at times don't get POs.
All right, so how much was the bookkeeper?
It was 50, and it was to do agendas, do some receiving over, and it would help like 50 sections. If you,
All right.
we probably need that one.
You do that with the,
We probably need that more than the project person, to be honest. The project person, what we're running into, is more people wanting us to do the projects, and there's a lot of, Title VI compliance is not necessarily.
that's part of it, but we got a bunch of little projects going around.
And we are trying to get them all in here, and the other thing is you've got Title VI issues.
Is there anything else here? Let's take
So,
a moment on that.
along to support this also, I'm looking at if we could get purchasing in the county centralized. I'd like to get, and it's been a while since I looked at it, our limit up to 50,000, if we could get a clear, what does that mean? If we get, we get
have
a
to have
purchasing
school.
clerk, we have to have school?
According to what I'm understanding, you comptroller's office,
Okay,
I'll
let's
see
get
that.
this.
To do the 50,000, you would actually have to have the school.
Okay, I thought we'd give an advantage on that.
Because you've already maxed out 25. And you've got everything
Okay, it's fine.
consolidated.
I thought if
how
we-
we did it right now.
It was explained to me differently, but I'll go with it.
But, to be clear, we're doing everything else.
We have a motion here. Any other thoughts on it? So the motion is to add, did you have one, Ms. Bristol? Comment?
So we're still in the motion.
The motion is to add a bookkeeper back to the,
So that we can move over purchasing from highway.
any further discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm gonna go no on this one. But I'm a rule, I think I lost every vote today, so. So that one, so you add it back in.
But you're not bitter.
I mean, when something loses.
Forgive me, you voted to put a bookkeeper back in to move POs over.
Yes.
The committee lets them open the POs, but.
Okay, anything else? I think we're almost done with that.
Are we going to capital, or are we not?
Capital.
So,
Yeah, we can do capital. That's fine.
you keep saying that we can take everything out that's a new item, and we
Where
can
do you-
instruct them to.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, just, or just at least flag it.
Can we instruct them to?
Yeah.
There's
let us
two
know?
things, new items sometimes are because people misclassify the year before. And
I mean,
Yeah.
I just think,
Just
I
look at
think
it and let
flag
us
it,
know.
flag it.
Can y'all flag?
We'll try to make this like.
Yeah. As opposed to just blank remove it.
Yes, thank
So
you.
let's just,
We'll make anything we think is potentially brand new and odd color for you.
all right.
And then next meeting, we can go through.
Color.
I've got to figure out what
Tan.
color.
Tan's the non color.
It's just, I don't want to remove it, let's just, that's fine, let's flag it. Okay, next thing. So let's do capital, and then we've got 20 minutes.
It's
Go
97.
to the capital project fund appropriation.
Is that 97?
Yes, it is.
First item, trustee commission requires a statute. We went through, number, well, somebody said you had to.
97, but
90, I'm not one of those.
no, I don't either.
What have we not decided on? The only
You're right,
change
yeah.
was the 2 million.
You said 90.
Is there,
That is.
before we go,
The
we got 20 minutes here.
Revenue.
Do we, is there anything that anybody, we removed the 2 million from the courthouse, that's what happened. Is there anything else anybody wants to remove? Mr. Klein?
The two things that I wanted to talk about, I think they're supposed to be in capital, is the EMS station for $3.5 million.
And now, just to be clear, which one, is this one for the White House location?
Well,
Come on.
yeah, it's either White House or Millersville.
This one's the White House.
And the reason I want to pull it out, at least for the time being, is because Bethel Road is very close to White House. And there's been talk about the one covers the other, and I'm not totally sure, but I know that we're still in negotiations on the MOU with the city of Millersville of whether we keep our two people in there, we do the work on the veterans or not. So that's one of the questions I have. And the other one is the $4.5 million the sheriff wants to include in the old jail area. Now, if this is Water Street and this is Smith Street, currently the sheriff is in 3,000 square feet. Ron Blanton's people are going to be up in here. This is 23,100 square feet.
But we already voted on moving.
Well, we
in there as a,
voted that he has,
full commission.
we voted that he gets the space.
Right.
But we haven't voted on the $4.5 million to improve, and we don't even know what we're improving it for.
So
So
what do you want to do?
I want to give him $100,000 for space planning and hold back on the rest.
And just
Come forward with a plan.
Yeah, let's have a plan before we accommodate with,
You know what, that's fine, like
I like
$100,000 just for, to hire a planner.
yeah, that's
All right,
fine.
that's fine, I'm fine with that.
Is 100,000 enough?
I
It seems
think,
like every time y'all
You're
come back.
going to have to hire an architect or an engineer. The problem is, even the design's a percentage, so we can bring you back the design percentage based on the estimated cost.
So is 100 enough?
If you've not, to determine if you're doing 23,000 square foot frames. So I think the best thing right now is to put the 100 and send it to Sheriff Craddock. He can come back to the committee and talk to him what he needs to get the estimate.
I've got 3 sets of plans upstairs, and Josh says, I'm gonna sit down with Eric as soon as we can.
Who Josh,
He, look, put 100 in there, and if it turns out that he needs 300, we'll do 300.
Great,
Okay,
great.
that's fine.
So I'll say we'll notify him, he can come back.
Great.
And can we,
Now, that's true, because, so that was,
Where's-
but that's different,
opioids.
That's coming, and I don't wanna mess with that, because that's coming out of, because that's, we're bringing, what, 450 out of,
If I recall, 500,000 of opioid, 150 out of here.
150 out of this, so we need to
And
leave this
150
alone.
here would be the architecture.
So we need to leave this one alone, so, because it's, we're kind of splitting it up here. So I would leave, so the 100,000 is for Eric Craddock's, or Sheriff Craddock's on his side.
Yeah.
But we have the 650, which is totally,
That's all of that plan. That's the entire.
That's his entire,
that's all his, that's right.
That's his
it's 8,026 square feet.
Got one additional question. The mayor said he would try to help with the outside. Do we need to give the mayor's budget some money to do the ramps and all
I thought they were already taking care of
That's a
that.
question for him. He said he was gonna take care of it, but did you need money to do it?
We took care of, we voted on that last.
I don't know if it's part of the ADA or is it something additional?
It's ADA because it's a wheelchair ramp.
Is he planning to use that money or do you need?
I was planning on doing that under the ADA budget, I'm waiting on the estimates.
anything else, Mr. Klein?
That's it, that's all I
I
got.
have a different kind of request. It's something that we've discussed in here, to go back to, and I'm not gonna reduce the sheriff's vehicles or anything. I would like to send a request for, health and emergency management to put a schedule together for a budget where they look at the cars and come out with a long-term plan of what they need and let health and emergency management handle that and start,
Just be like, can't start on the fall in.
you know what I'm saying, can we do that?
Yeah,
And
we
tell
can just
them-
ask.
What would the motion be to send it on us for long-term planning or whatever?
Do I need to make a motion? I'd like to make a motion for that.
Oh, do we need, well, okay, let's take care of this, what you were doing.
Be helpful in the long-term plan.
Okay, so we have a motion to send that over to Health and Emergency Services.
And what I would like them to do is look at
We
the
have a motion second,
vehicles,
all in favor?
Aye.
all emergency vehicles.
Can you have the motion to send copies?
That's fine, all.
All right.
That's fine.
So they can start planning.
Okay, we're just running close on time, guys, so,
Where we at?
So this
What do you wanna
3.5
do?
million,
Yeah.
Mr. Klein had brought this up, I'm very much against killing this, do we wanna kill it, is there a motion?
Oh,
I make a motion to kill it until we figured out what we're doing
We
with
have a
Miller
motion
Zone.
to remove 3.5 million, is there a second?
I'm gonna-
We have a motion on.
I'm gonna second it just
Okay.
because, and Mayor, I want to talk to you about, because the other day I talked to the room about if the state's coming forward with fire, if the county's gonna start stepping into that. I'd like to look at a multi-function building opposed to just designing it for EMS. If we know that it, and we all think it's coming, I mean, I think you could probably get on these too, looking at fire and
Is there-
EMS in that building, not just
I say we leave the 3.5 million in there and focus on that.
a multi-purpose.
So we have a,
Absolutely, we can design it that way.
Ms. Boyd, go ahead, oh, excuse me,
Can
we have
we-
Ms. Berger,
Oh, no.
Ms. Boyd, go ahead.
Can we move it down to planning? Can we go half and plan, and then bring the rest in
It's up
later
to-
like we did
There's a
the other?
motion on the floor, there's a motion on the floor to remove it, that's,
Okay. Vote on that motion first.
do we have, is there any further discussion to remove it? All in favor?
I'm
All
gonna,
right.
I'm gonna go remove it,
Okay. All
No.
against, no, motion fails.
yeah.
So it stays at 3.5 million, but Mr. Mayor, you can, I don't
Can
know
we
whether
do
that.
it?
We'll talk, we'll talk.
You know what I'm
about the
saying?
plan. Yeah,
All right,
Get a better,
I agree.
any other?
Now, we had taken 1.2 million out of Eric Craddock's budget for cars and things like that. Since we just pulled out 4.5, can we take any of that and
We
give it?
could, but why would we do that if we don't have?
we already said we didn't need it.
Because the person, he matched those cars up to new personnel.
Yeah.
So if you did if you remove the new personnel, then you don't need the cars.
You may also want to think.
And we can't use that money we took back for personnel
No.
because it's not recurring.
That's
Right.
And you may want to think about this right here. When this money depleted, if you have some of this money left, it would be very helpful for highway.
Yeah.
So you got 20 million here
Is
now.
there, I told you, I'd like to have I'd like Toby to have that software, because I think it'd be a great planning tool for him as well as for all of us.
How
I
much
don't
was
know,
that software?
I was offering them money, and said, I never offered.
$250,000, I make a motion for up to $250,000 for the recurring software.
Yes. I think it's a subscription. You know what, he can like, my understanding is Galvin has bought something, and they're running it around on the road, but we need Toby to tell
So,
us.
yeah, just let him tell us, ask him what it is.
And he's looking at somebody else driving it around,
So
but
let's
I
make
wanted to have.
Didn't he tell us about it?
I agree, but let's, no changes right now, and I'm sorry,
I know, we gotta go, I know.
So, anything else that we need to change on capital? All right,
Can we ask Toby to just bring this off?
yes, we can.
Thank you.
Let's do that. Anything else? I think we are gonna close out, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, here we go. Boom, we have a budget that's now.